Why don't we, good morning, everyone. Why don't we get started? Roll call.
Good morning. So, Board Member Firth? Here. Board Member Liu?
Here.
Board Member Guyer?
Here.
Board Member Kim?
Here.
Board Member Balte?
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, anything from staff as far as communication or?
No changes in the agenda. I just wanted to make you aware that the next hearing, March 17th, it will be a joint hearing with the HRB. We do have one project that's in the SOFA area, and that plan does call for a joint meeting with the ARB and the HRB for review of that project.
And you said that's the next meeting, or that's the second meeting of March?
Sorry, it's the next meeting in my head, but yes, you're right. We do have a March 3rd and then a March 17th, so the 17th would be the joint meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Why don't we start with the approval of the minutes? We have the February 4th minutes. Go ahead.
I have a comment. This is at the end of the discussion of Homer. It said that I remarked regarding the landscaping and the lack of details. It wasn't the lack of details. It was the inappropriateness of the design, in my view, for a
Great, and then also in the on the same item, right? Under the motion, it says that right, the board made a motion to approve the project with the following items to be reviewed, and I think that I just want to clarify that that's to subcommittee and not to staff.
Right, right. Anyone else? Can I get a motion?
move approval as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Okay, so what do we start off with? The first item, which is a study session, 411 to 437 Lytton Avenue, request by Hayes Group Architects on behalf of Eklund and Company for architectural review to allow the demolition of an existing commercial building and the construction of a new 3-story mixed-use office and residential building, 2 units, and a 1,417 square foot addition to an existing historic Category 2 residence on 2 lots to be merged. A 2-level underground parking garage is proposed to be constructed under the new mixed-use building adjacent to the existing residential building. Environmental, an initial study and mitigated negative declaration are being prepared. Zoning district CP-CP, community commercial downtown district, and pedestrian shopping combination district. And we had a sort of a gray area, so at this point,
I would like to recuse myself from this item. I'll step into the back room, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we start staff report?
Thank you, and good morning. I'm Sheldon Nossing, contract planner, project planner for this project. Prepared a brief presentation. The applicant is here as well. The project requires architectural review, and that's why it's before the board. There are no other exceptions being requested. Other requests that would occur after the ARB would be the lot merger as well as a condominium map. The project's located at the corner of Lytton and Kipling in the downtown. The combined lots would be about 15,000 square feet. The project would be 40 feet tall, which is under the height limit. The adjacent uses include single-family homes, commercial uses, and a city parking lot. So this is the site plan depicting the historic single-family home. It's mostly designed to be independent of the new structure. The basements underneath they're not combined, they are separate, and the covered parking for the single-family resident would be in the basement garage of the mixed-use building. Some of the key issues are the adjacency to the historic building, as well as the architectural design and context, and those are described in the staff report and will be further described within the environmental document that will come before you as well. Some of the next steps would be to complete and circulate that environmental document. That's expected pretty soon. There's a 20-day circulation period for that, and also to receive formal comment recommendation from the ARB. So with that, we recommend that the ARB conduct a public hearing and provide some feedback on the concepts. No formal action is necessary at this time. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Can the applicant, you've got 10 minutes.
Looks like it's a little distorted. Good morning, members of the board. Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be presenting the project on behalf of my clients, Brad and Bradley Ahikian, who are here in the audience. I'm also joined this morning with Sherry Von Dorn of Von Dorn Abed Landscape Architects. And I'd like to thank Mr. Singh for helping us bring this application to you. We were here in 2014 as well for a preliminary. So 437 Lytton, as he just explained, is going to be the combination of two sites on the corner of Lytton and Kipling. The Category 2 historic building is here. We'll combine the sites for about a 15,000 square foot site. As Mr. Singh explained, it's CDCP. We have RMD at the rear, so there's some screening issues that are important. Public parking facility across the street. This is the picture of the existing historic home. And on the right-hand side, the Lytton building parking lot. There's a two-story Chicago title building there now. This is the back of the historic home. That's the Chicago title building. The program, demolish the existing two-story office building, develop a new building with a one-to-one approximately FAR. We're not quite there for the commercial. We're not using any TDR. We're not using any bonus floor area. We're not asking for any exceptions to parking. We're fully parked, an underground garage. We're creating two rooftop condominiums. One's a one-bedroom unit, one's a two-bedroom unit. And then the historic home will also become a two-bedroom. It's a home now. It'll remain a home. And we'll be restoring that, and our HRB hearing, I think, is on the 10th of March. This is the plan that you saw back in June of 2014. And essentially, our goals are about the same, kind of reinforce the corner with the building mass, put all of the utilities towards the rear of the building with access off the side street, create some kind of public space that buffers and creates an entry court that one can see the historic building and also the main entrance to the building. So this kind of creates an activity zone there, and then create a buffer at the rear to set the building back from. There's a residence located right here. There's also a residence on this side. So when we were here in June of 2014, comments were to think about the pedestrian overlay on the two sidewalk frontages, maybe create some recesses, some planting opportunities at the parking or the garage ramp. Is there a way to screen the garage ramp so it doesn't feel like a big hole? And then possibly address the height of the staircase adjacent to the historic building. So we've looked at all those things today, and I think we have a successful solution. This is the new site plan today. You can see the corner here. We've created a new treatment for the building with recessed planters and articulation of both the first floor and the second floor. The building steps back and creates this plaza space where we'll have some public art, which is a really cool piece that we're not allowed to show you yet, apparently, called the Nib. We have the main entrance off of Lytton, and then a secondary entrance for kind of a private entrance for the residents that can come in here and go up this elevator off of Kipling, the residential street. We also have our main entrance to the parking structure located there. And then we spent a lot of time working with Geetha, I forget her last name, who lives here, trying to create ways to screen the building from them, as well as the homes over in this area. So we have extensive screening in-ground. This is all in-ground planting. Screening on the roof terraces and screening on the roofs, all landscape screenings to help provide a nice transition. We also are concerned about the setback from the house that's directly behind us. We're 31 feet at the ground floor. We're 20 feet at the upper floor at the office level, and it steps back from there. The existing building is 27 feet, and it's a two-story office building, and there is no landscaping except a hedge that's about this tall. So much, much less of an impact, if any, than the existing. And we're trying to reference local roof forms that we find in the neighborhood with the roof form that we have on the building, and that's part of the transition. So ground floor plan, pretty much open with utilities located at the back. The addition for the residents is really a 238 square foot addition at the rear, and then it's a basement. So 1,400 square feet sounds like a large addition for a small house, but it's really below grade. This shows the second floor office space, generally open plan, again, with a large terrace at the back that has landscape screening on both sides. This is our yard here, which is 25 feet deep. 2 exit stairs, and the way that we reduced the height of the one staircase is we basically eliminated it from extending to the 3rd floor. This will become a single exit floor for the 2 residences, and so the exit is on this side of the building, no longer over here on this side where it was getting tall. And I think Chair Guyer that was one of your main concerns a year and a half ago. Existing or former section of the building, really to show you that we've pulled this back so we can get in-ground planting at the rear of the building, create great screening. This is the daylight plane at the terrace level, screening on the terrace. These are the residential units above, 2 levels of underground parking. The Lytton elevation, excuse me, the stair core is here. You can see the height of that stair core. We basically not only reduced the stair core so it's the same height as the building to the left on the corner, 23 feet. It sort of frames the historic house there. It's also almost 30 feet back from the street, so it's in reality, you can't really see it, but we have this step-up line here that comes across, so it's a nice transition to the new building. And then we've articulated this facade in a different way, brought the mass of the building to the ground, created deep recesses, landscape planters along there, and then the windows here sort of slope back to welcome you into the courtyard and begin to reveal the historic home as you enter from the east down Lytton. Former proposed shows, again, the landscape buffer here. There's a home over here. At the rear entry to the garage, we have a steel frame trellis. That's 8, you'll see it in the next picture. This is the former north elevation that faces the residence, where we had not addressed the buffering yet. And then this is the proposed elevation. And so there's an 8-foot metal woven wire trellis, basically, that extends over the top of the car ramp and creates a wonderful screen. It's on detail 11A 8.1 that shows you how we're screening from the existing. This planting is all on our property. Let me go back. This is the sloping roof. It's a zinc colored metal roof, and these are balconies for the residential units above. And then this is the historic home. This is the former west elevation, and then the proposed west elevation. We kept the main roof form, shows the house here, but it shows how we've reduced this way down from where we were before with this element located there. And then we've stepped this down to about 11 feet where it was 15 feet, almost 16 feet before, and that's the buffer to the woman, Geetha, who lives in the home adjacent. Former, corner shot, proposed with, you can see the building coming down, all the planting opportunities here. The historic home would be located there. This is all rooftop terrace. This is sort of from the back so that you get a real good sense of how we're creating that screening. So we had that before. This is our home. This is the historic home with the addition. This is Geetha's home. And this is how it steps down, and she's going to hopefully plant vines on the concrete wall here. And this is our backyard with a new specimen tree and a lot of planting. And Sherry Von Dorn's here if you have questions on the landscaping. Former historic home located here. This is the main entrance to the building and the stair tower, which is no longer a stair tower. We pulled it way down. I'm really happy with the way this steps, and you can see it's also set quite a ways back from the street. What's going to be wonderful is when you're in that stair, this corner window here basically allows you to just see the plaza and the historic home in front. Former garage entrance, and then this gives you an idea of this, this steel trellis structure that comes and covers it all, and then the fence starts at 8 feet here, and it extends all the way back, not the fence, but the trellis. There's also a fence, but in between the two, there's the planting. And so we have vines growing on the metal screen to provide screening, not only from above, but also from the neighbor next door. And that's it. Thank you very much. Look forward to your comments.
Thank you. Okay, I have no speaker slips, but is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the committee? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion and bring it back to the board. Q, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hayes, for your presentation. I have a question maybe for staff to begin. So I understand that there was a preliminary ARB hearing 2 years back, and then this hearing is not to make a decision. So was there a reason for that, or what's the understanding?
Right, so what's driving that is because there's the environmental document that needs to be circulated. So this also provides an opportunity for the ARB to provide some comments. We do have some time to make those changes if necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, this, excuse me, this project is also part of the new annual office limit, and we have a deadline of the end of March to make sure which projects are going to be potentially approvable at that point, and those projects would be able to be part of that office limit project.
Okay, thank you. So maybe that's a good place to start for other comments is, when I first look at the project and the program, I know, it's probably beyond the reach of anything that we can do design-wise, but I feel like it is a lost opportunity to create some kind of a retail space on the ground floor as opposed to keeping it office, especially with that courtyard that's been formed there. I see so many courtyards of office buildings around town that really aren't activated and they aren't used, and it feels like it's such a nice volume that could be used if the programmatic element of the space were different. Thank you for showing the, yes?
If you ask me a question, I'm happy to answer it about retail.
I tell you, why don't you hang on, let him finish and then you can answer some of them.
Thank you for showing the previous presentation slides. I've always find that very helpful, and I'm always curious to know kind of the design lineage of where this design has come from, so thank you for that. However, I think part of the previous design that I liked was the fact that there was a little bit more glazing and a little bit more glass, and I think that made the building seem to float a little bit more, and I think with this current design, it's become a little bit more grounded, and it's not necessarily grounding of the building that I dislike, but I think it makes it appear a little bit more massive, not from this view, but from the Kipling corner. Yeah. And then I think overall, from a pedestrian scale, especially at this corner as well, I just wonder if the building is doing enough to engage the pedestrians, if it's doing enough at that scale where a person is walking by, not just up and down Lytton, but also for those people that live in residences down Kipling or further north of downtown, as they make their approach to the downtown area, what kind of engaging things does the building do to make sure that the pedestrian understands this building? From the plan perspective, I had a couple of questions. For the office uses, I know that they're somewhat separated by the lobby, but and you can answer this after, but I was just curious if those two offices were going to be leased to separate office tenants, or if they were going to be a single tenant, and also the access for the residences up above. It seems like if the offices are closed, is the lobby closed? Does that mean that they only have access to downtown by going through that back corridor and then down Kipling, or is the lobby accessible for the residences so that, if they're having dinner somewhere downtown, that they don't have to necessarily walk all the way around Kipling and they can enter from the Lytton side? And then just, I'm sorry. I do appreciate the organization and the thoughtfulness of the utility corridor and the services. I'm always very appreciative of underground parking, and I'm glad that residences have been incorporated. I think that's really becoming a key factor, especially in our city where we just don't have enough places to live. And just want to say that it's great that there are residences. It's too bad that there couldn't be more. And I think I'll leave my comments at that, and maybe you can answer just a couple of those questions that I had.
I'd be happy to, Board Member Kim. So what about retail? We are in the pedestrian overlay zone, so we're required to design the space so that retail could be a viable occupancy at some point on the ground floor. And so that was one of the reasons that we essentially set the building in and went with a frameless glass system all the way from this point to the corner, and then it returns. Is that could easily be changed if we wanted doors that would open onto the beginning of the plaza there. That option is available. So we have, I know we had a lot of glass before, but I felt the comments we received from some of you were on the board at that time were good comments, and I do think that the response that we have here is very similar to the response that other buildings, new commercial buildings on Lytton have had, where there's a large window in a recess with planting opportunities below that to kind of provide some buffer place for somebody to sit. It would be seat wall height. So we do see that this could be changed to retail, and instead of stringing it along that whole ground floor, I think it made more sense to create a synergy here. So we'd still have the office entry, but you have the retail entry in the same general location. So it all kind of feeds off of that plaza that we have on the ground floor. So that's the short answer, I guess. In terms of multiple or single tenants, we like to design flexibility in. That space at the rear is intended to be some kind of an assembly room, a kitchen, cafeteria, not a cafeteria, but a break area for the building, for the office occupancy. And so it could be a separate space that then the office would have access to if we had the lobby open at all times for residents and office users. That's how it was conceived. However, if the residents don't want to go through the main lobby, they do have the option to come off of Kipling through a gate and down the back sidewalk into their own private entrance and elevator to take them up. But I would hope that they would use the front, but you never know. The reality is they're going to park in the garage if they're coming back from somewhere, taking the elevator up, but coming out the front to engage with the downtown would make sense. So we're not prohibiting that. It's really going to be a function of who the tenants are, I think. I think that answers. Actually, let me, Member Kim, just one more slide. So we spent a lot of time, I think, on the design of this and how do we transition from this residential community to the downtown. I mean, that's the challenge for this whole section of Lytton on this north side. And so by having primarily landscape features here, setting the stair back. I believe the stair is set back approximately the same plane as the house that's next door. It provides a nice transition and creates an area for a planter here with potential seat wall, so you could wait for somebody that's coming from from the residential area. So I felt like that did a good job trying to engage. And then right away, you've got these big windows that either look into a potential retail space, or I think the initial intent is that they'd look for an office tenant, to be honest with you. But you know, it could transition over time, so it's flexible. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe in closing, I guess, to me, it still seems that the building is almost turning its back onto Kipling, especially with the possibility that the space could be converted to retail at some point. It seems that the entrance point to that retail, or even currently with office space, is really more towards the smaller historic building as opposed to any kind of entry along the Kipling-Lytton corner. And, you know, Lytton does extend quite a bit further down towards Middlefield with additional, you know, downtown-related activities, and with any possible expansion of the downtown. I think the building, to me, seems like it still doesn't open itself enough towards Middlefield side of town. And then as far as the scale of the pedestrian as you're walking down Kipling towards downtown, I think there are elements that break up the building enough, but I think my comment was more towards the, you know, things that you can reach out and touch. And I understand that there's a bench there, but I think once you start hitting the what appears to be yellow in this, you know, perspective, once you start hitting those surfaces, I think it starts to feel a little bit stark, and you know, maybe there could be a little bit more done to kind of break that up. But you know, it's just a comment, and thank you for your explanations.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Alex?
I have a few questions. So Ken, I was wondering if you could walk us through the materials board. And I think the material I want to know most about is the Parklex, particularly like the gold color.
Okay.
But if you could just walk us through the materials.
And is that the only finished board that's here? The one that I brought?
Yes.
It is,
There's
okay.
something down there, but that might be another project.
Okay. So there's two Parklex colors. As you know, it's a rain screen product, which is, I think, great for building performance. Is that? Oh, that's 3225. Yeah. And so the lighter of the two colors is intended to be a panelized look on the commercial part of the building. And the reason for choosing a wood product instead of a cement product or a plaster product or a metal product was to relate more to a residential feel. And then when we move to the residential units, the residential feel of the community, when we move to the residential units on the third floor, the idea is to take that same Parklex product and not in a different color, and use it in more of a plank form, so that it begins to look like what you might see as a lap siding in a more modern way. And then we carry that all the way down the sort of the reference roof form, and then wrap the third floor with that. So that was the thinking about the Parklex. The metal, the roof is a metal zinc gray standing seam roof. And that should, I don't know what M1 and M2 and all that is, but you can read the written description there. And then the stairwell that faces the residential area is a metal, but it's actually a shingled sheet metal product, so it has a smaller scale. We played with lots of different options on that, and we just kept coming back to something that had more texture. Once again, because we felt like it tied in better to the scale of going down Kipling, whereas when you go around to this side of the building, it's more of a detail metal panel, and aluminum composite metal that outlines the building shape. Other materials, obviously clear glass. These are actually aluminum shade sun fins that wrap this corner here, and then they also reoccur back here at the commercial lobby behind the stair. The railing, I know it's something that Board Member Pop and some of you also used to be concerned about, but right now we're not proposing any kind of film on the third floor glass rail. It's a glass rail with a stainless steel metal frame, and I think the stainless steel is on there.
Okay, thank you. And then on the, I have a question for is it Sherry, the landscape? Yes.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could great, explain, there's some things that I haven't seen before in designs. I think you've got sort of unusual bench and then like a wavy planter wall. If you could comment on that. And then also, with regard to screening the neighbors, I think that I did notice that most of the trees are being removed on the site. I know there are a couple being
Yes.
retained, but there are some in the back garden area. There,
Yep.
and I did look at the tree protection plan, but I was wondering if all of the neighbors are in support of that, of all of the tree removal, because it's going to affect their
Right.
privacy. Yeah.
Right. Sure. Well, starting with the elements you first mentioned, so in the plaza, we're trying to create a fun, engaging space, and so we've got these wave planters that go up and down. They're just kind of fun and playful. And then we have these precast concrete benches, which actually retain soil, so it creates a raised planter to give a little bit of privacy from lit into the plaza and kind of create an engaging space. So those are the elements that you were mentioning. As far as screening, we've taken a lot of care to try to do our best to get some privacy for the neighbors, like you mentioned. So most of the trees did have to get removed because of the building and the placement. However, we're putting an evergreen tree in the back that you can see there to help screen. We have some hedges along the back edge, which are a combination of pittosporum and bamboo. They'll get to be anywhere between 10 to 20 feet tall, and they'll need to be maintained by the owner, obviously, to keep that height and keep them trimmed, but I think they'll provide excellent screening. And then at the upper level roof deck, we also have additional hedges there that can get about 8 feet tall. So if you're standing on that deck, your eye level will always be below the plant material, and that's intentional so that off to the left, you're not staring at those neighbors, and then off to the right, you're not also. So we're trying to get a lot of privacy there.
It seems to me that there may be a privacy issue between two of the different properties on Waverly, right? So there's number,
On Waverly.
no, I was actually thinking Waverly. So we have, I thought I wrote the numbers down somewhere. It seems like there are two houses right on Waverly. One is a duplex. Here, I think I wrote the addresses down somewhere.
So, Board Member Liu, so there are, I think it's the first house on Waverly. Right. That's the one I believe that's owned by Geetha. And she is the owner that we worked with. Oh, I don't see the court.
Yeah,
the
and
cursor.
she came to the previous hearing.
Yes, she did. Yeah, that's right.
I do
And she
recall
wrote a
that.
letter too. Yeah.
Yes.
And then.
And I was concerned about the second house which seems to be a duplex, where there's like a
Well,
garage.
so Geetha's home actually was the other home that was built just like this one originally. So they're replicas of each other. She's added on to hers. I don't know about the house that's further north on Waverly. I don't recall being contacted by them.
Okay. Yeah, it was, I think it's 439 and 441. It seems like there's a house in the front and something in the back. So when I was out on the site, it seemed like that they had a deck that overlooks your backyard, and you
Over
wasn't
our
really
backyard, yeah. So yeah, this is not our backyard. This is our terrace. So Geetha is here. She has a deck and a new addition back here, and you're talking about the house that's then here, I guess, right?
No. I was thinking just where you've got the proposed new tree.
Yeah.
Maybe I was wrong. I mean, I did go to the site yesterday, and I was looking at all of these things. I thought that there was an issue. Was thinking that there's a potential issue between that house, which I thought was
So this is Geetha's home.
Right, so I was thinking this, the
Yeah.
one,
And
that one.
we've not heard
right?
anything from this, and this is where we have this specimen evergreen tree that's
Yeah.
been planted. So they look into a backyard, basically.
Yeah, and so there's an existing tree that's being removed, and it's pretty nice. It's not, I mean, it's nothing amazing, right? But I mean, that was the one that I was mostly concerned about. And it seems like you're excavating that area for maybe the plenums in the garage or something,
Yeah.
but it seemed like you had a large area,
The excavation, I believe, ends right at this planter here.
right, and the tree is right in that.
The tree's right.
Well, the
you're
existing
saying,
tree,
yeah.
right, the existing tree is closer.
Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think my question was there a way to save that tree? And I think you're saying no, but,
Yeah, there probably isn't, but that tree is also rated as low by the arborist in terms of health, and so it's not really rated high for saving, just because of its current health.
okay. Okay, why don't I move on? Okay. Okay, so we did get an email from Mr. Buchanan, and he was asking why can't there be retail, right, on the ground floor? And I did want to say that in the downtown zone, we do have the CDC zoning with the P overlay, and then some areas have the GF overlay, which in the ground floor, that actually restricts things like office uses and like business services. And it really does require, you can do some other uses, but you need a conditional use permit. But really, that's the trigger, right, for that.
Correct.
And that is University Avenue and some of the side streets, but it doesn't include Lytton. And that's why Lytton's always been, it's been more of an office, and there's a little bit of retail, but it's not required.
Correct.
Under our zoning. So that's the distinction between Lytton and University.
And then, because it's still in the P overlay district, it needs to be designed in a way that if a retailer was going to, would be viable.
Right, yes. So anyway, so that's the story on that. So it's possible, but it's not required by our zoning. I think he also had several questions about the parking and the residential permit parking thing. And I think that's not really our board's purview so much, but it seems like you are providing more parking than is required.
Yeah.
And it seems the RPP is so new, I don't really want to comment on that at this point. I mean, it's just, we've just started it and it's still being modified. So why don't my take on it is to wait and see. His question was, it seems like he wants to restrict any future tenant from ever parking in his neighborhood. And we can't do that. Some places do that, like Stanford can do it because it's all their private property and they know who their employees are, and when you sign like an employee contract, like you have to give them your driver's license and your license plate, and they make sure that you never park on campus if you're not allowed, if you're not a full-time employee or whatever. They do stuff like that, but we can't do that. We live in a city.
So he wants retail, and he doesn't want anybody to park in his neighborhood. If it's office, you could certainly control that much
Office, well,
better.
I think they're getting at the full-time office employees. Anyway, so anyways, that's where we are on that. On the building compatibility, I would just say like the amount of frontage that you have on Lytton is comparable to other new buildings on Lytton. I think you have sort of like a setback where you're planning the art and whatnot, and that is similar to 379 Lytton, which is just a block down, where they sort of set the building back.
Is that the one on the corner?
On the corner to
Yeah.
work with there's like a little Mediterranean house
Yeah.
that's a restaurant, right? So they did step that back in respect to the smaller existing house, and so you're doing something similar, so I can support that. I also appreciate that that you're really keeping the massing right at the sidewalk level down to like 2 stories, and then you're stepping it back, and I think that that's appropriate for Lytton. We have some other buildings on Lynn that are 3 stories at the sidewalk level, and then fourth floor is setback, and they feel a little big to me. I mean, I think that this is more compatible with the prevailing buildings on Lytton, so I can support that. I'm having some issues with the gold parklex. It seems a little out of character. It seems a little too contemporary for Lytton. I think the only other building that I recall being that has been used in Palo Alto is the Theranos in the courtyard. It's a little yellow. It's like a little bright to me.
That's not Parklex, though.
Is it not? Okay, I thought it was.
We talked to them.
Okay. Because I know that I think they were proposing it, but I know that things changed in the.
Yeah.
So, well, whatever it is, that's like too bright. I've looked at Parklex on the computer monitor, which is not necessarily so accurate. It seems really yellow. This seems better. But I would just say that the adjacent buildings on Lytton, so say like 379 Lytton, that's like stone and wood siding. 390 Lytton is bronze, metal, and brick. Like it's a little darker and earthier colors.
Okay.
I generally like the warmer, like the reddish colors. And then I think the other concern I have, I'm not sure I'm opposed to it, but like all of the zinc standing seam, I think it's mostly my objection, maybe just the amount of it. But I think my concern is that the surrounding zoning there on all those houses is RMD NP, which is maintaining the visual character and the historic character and retaining the single-family houses. And those are all sort of the wood aesthetic. I do like this.
You mean a wood shingle?
Yeah, but I like that the standing seam gives you texture and relief and shadow. I do like all of that. It's just that I think it's the amount of the gray could make it seem.
So you're thinking a dark, because when we were here before, we had a darker color, and the comments were, I think it's a little bit too dark, like the form.
This is better. No, I think this is better. I think than the dark taupe. I'm thinking out loud.
Okay, I'm with you.
Mostly because we had lots of Kipling folks in protest of the 429 University project, and then after that, we had some projects with this RMD NP zoning, which I've never really encountered before in Palo Alto. And it seems like that NP zoning is trying to say something fairly clear about maintaining the existing quality of the neighborhood. And that's different than other projects.
It's a higher density than the R1 neighborhoods. The RMD is a higher density.
Yeah, I do understand that. So that's where I'm on the materials.
Okay.
If you can, I think just to go back to the second house in on Waverly, if you could on your site plan try to include the deck in your documents. Because I think my hunch is just from just going to the site is that it's closer, that the deck makes that building closer than your drawings appear. And I don't know what's inside that building, if it's just a garage with a recreation room or if that's actually the second unit. Okay, and then I think my other main comment was on your trellis over the garage ramp. I think your drawings are showing you're putting it close to the street, and I was wondering if it made any sense to have that at the building setback line for the adjacent house. And that's, again, just thinking out loud.
Let's see, are we on the property line with that, or are we? I need to.
It doesn't seem like you're on the property line. It seems like you're maybe like 5 feet back.
Yeah, I mean, that could certainly push back. We still have screen between the driveway and the property line. Our screening still comes through. If we cut that trellis member back, we'd probably pull the 8-foot woven wire metal back with it, right?
Right.
And maybe that pulls back to the face of the stairs. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I'm thinking. I don't have a strong opinion about that. It was something that popped into my head this morning.
Yeah.
And again, you're just trying to maintain the pattern of Kipling Street as long as possible, and then the Lytton building is its own thing. And I think that's all of my comments for now.
Okay, Wynn?
Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't seen this before,
I do.
but it's good to see it now. I spend a lot of time walking this neighborhood. I live in this neighborhood. It's probably the most eclectic in the city, certainly in terms of the vintage and varying heights of its buildings. And I have some thoughts and some questions and some things I'd like to know more about when we see this again. I appreciate the attention to daylight planes. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness about putting landscaping in appropriate places. I'd like to know more about visual intrusion from the upper levels to the homes, buildings along Waverly and Kipling to the end of the block, essentially. I mean, we have the classic wipe out all neighborhood privacy with 101 Alma, but apparently it wasn't enough to keep a council member from moving in. On the other hand, he did join the council, perhaps because of concern about impacts. And I'm still concerned about the impacts of this building in two ways. One is that walking down Lytton is a highly varied experience. Some of it is pleasant, some of it's awful. Bank of America would probably be the nadir, would we guess? Yes. So that's the bottom. You don't want to be worse than them. And it's an example of a failed plaza. It's got an open space, just doesn't make it pleasant to be there.
Yeah, well, that's lesson number one. You don't elevate a plaza.
I'm sure there's some elevated plazas that could work, but that one doesn't, in my experience. I'm also curious, the western wall of your staircase, what's it made of? Plan West?
It is, this is also the shingle lapped metal. So it matches the other stair.
One of the things that I'm curious about and that concerns me is that open stairwells are great for encouraging people to use stairs. I like it when they look out into the world. But there's one built further up on Everett by High Street on a building that has said it's for a skincare facility that really strikes me as an intrusion. It's like this, lighthouse.
That's our project.
I don't like it.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I couldn't comment
The
on
ARB
it
liked
at the
it.
time because it's near me. Well, I live there, I don't.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm glad to know that the side is not translucent because I think there's a problem. If it provides, soft night street lighting as pedestrians walk by, that's great. If it provides excessive lighting, it's not.
You're talking about the stair still, or the
Yeah,
the stair?
it's non-residential intrusion.
Yeah. The lighting would be very, very important.
I'm not sure what the best, I think that the big driveway down into the garage on Kipling is a problem. I think driveway entrances, subterranean garage entrances in residential neighborhoods are not pleasant for pedestrians. They send a really clear signal that this is not, you're not in this neighborhood anymore. I think it probably will be very helpful to observe the setbacks as they're built of the adjacent residential neighborhoods and try to pick them up and echo them and reinforce them. I'm concerned about the transition to the historical home next to you, next to your project, the fact that it belongs to the same property owner has its uses, but it doesn't lessen the fact that this seems to me to be a new building that's making that building look like it's not long for this world. It looks more like block busting than transition. On the other side, on the Kipling frontage, could you show us those roofs again that you were echoing?
Yes. I'm just writing some notes.
We've probably got every conceivable roof form in the city somewhere in downtown North.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
you
think
do.
some of the most striking ones there, the Dutch Gambrels are over in Professorville.
Yeah, this is from
Yeah.
that neighborhood.
We
and-
don't do that. I mean, our distinctive feature, it seems to me our best modern buildings, probably the International Style building, about 6 stories on
The apartment.
Everett, which looks so smashing with its lovely flat roofs and clean lines, and somehow it doesn't sag. The way that the building tilts and cantilevers out towards the residential neighborhood, at least in the drawing, seems to me to increase the sense of intrusion of a different, a more urban's the wrong word, but
We sense it more as though you have a big porch on those old homes
I
and the roof would
experience
come
it as
out.
it
You have a
falling over
recess.
onto the little residential buildings.
Okay.
And for me, it adds to the sense of instability. The entire neighborhood can feel that it's, it's being slowly pushed into the creek. And I think what causes that for me is the substitution of more hardscape for less hardscape, so that when you're walking by, you can tell whether your eyes are opened or closed how much greenery there is as you walk down those streets. And we are clearly much less green than south of Forest, but this project seems to me, as it's shown here, to be extending that hardscape, grittier, literally grittier feel. And I would appreciate optimizing, maximizing the sense of plant material, changing the air and the sound and the experience. This is also a neighborhood full of bootleg software factories in nominally residential neighborhoods. I don't know what we do about that, except be sure that residential is designed to be residential. And I would like to see a more hospitable pedestrian experience walking down Lytton on that block. I understand there are trees there, and I know sometimes you show them and sometimes you don't, so we can see the building.
Yeah.
But I don't see where I'm going to pause and talk to a friend. It's a noisy street, but it's not that noisy. I don't see where I'm going to sit. I'm always looking for benches with backs. This is an elderly neighborhood. We haven't all moved out to be replaced by the people who are coming. So in fact, the current demographics sways old.
I'm sorry, the what?
The current demographic of that census tract is both old and young. There's lots of kids, there's lots of older people. In other words, there's lots of people who, don't make it all the way down the block without pausing to sit. So I would be interested in seeing ways of making that more hospitable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think a lot of good comments have been mentioned. I think most of mine have been included. Just a couple of things, which I guess is quite often the case. I think the nicest view of this building is the sort of bird's eye view, which no one will ever see. And part of that is that we've been talking, other members here, as far as the perception when you're walking right next to the building, and you've done a lot of reducing in scale and everything else, and I appreciate that, but it still looks like a very massive, squared off, non-inviting or not really inviting two-story building right at the street level. And I think part of that is also some of the discussion we've had of possibly having a retail space in there, which would make it a little bit more inviting than if it was an office space. But that's not really a design issue per se. But it just strikes me as that. I do agree also that if it wasn't for the fact that the same owner owns the small little building next door, I have a feeling that if this was from a separate owner, that person would be very upset at this point to get something like this next door. So I think we're looking at it as that those two would never be separated, but there could theoretically be a situation where sometime in the future that house gets sold and is not associated with it, and it, you know, that it comes out of the purview of that, of the building on the corner. So you've done a long ways, you've gone a long ways to tone it down on that side, but I don't know if it's there yet. I think that's probably, let me see. I think that's probably it. I think you've gotten some pretty good ideas. I don't want to throw too many of in there, but I think still in my case, you've done a good job of toning it down somewhat, but I think it's still awfully massive for the area, you know, where it's located. Any other comments from anyone?
It is under floor area.
Oh, yeah, we're way under.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I
You're
mean,
saying it looks massive.
it looks massive. I mean, you and I both do. You can make a building look a whole lot bigger than it actually is, or look smaller than it actually is.
And part of that, Chair Guyer, is that we're trying to move away from the residential district behind. So we're putting, you know,
Right.
reinforcing the street edge, and we're 2 stories. And so it's a difficult
No, no, like I
site,
said, and maybe it's just a matter of the,
the material,
like I said, that's the whole, my first comment about, it looks a whole lot better from the bird's eye view than, because then it's the most interesting, you've got the various shapes, but yet if you're walking along the street and looking up, it's a pretty straightforward, squared off 2-story building. Maybe that needs some more recesses or something to make it a little bit more human scale. And maybe a little bit more, you know, I don't expect you to put a huge residential-looking building there. That's not the point, but something to tone it down a little bit. And I do agree with with Alex's comment. I like some of those things. Once you get a big scale, they begin to look awfully yellow, the gold color.
on the panel.
Anything else from anyone? Okay, I think that's it. You've probably got enough to go with.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we now are going to our first public hearing, which is 1700 Embarcadero Road. Request by Deeg Snyder on behalf of Jones Palo Alto Real Property, LLC, for the architectural review and site design review to demolish the existing approximately 18,000 square foot building and construct a new approximately 62,000 square foot building for an automotive dealership. The application includes design enhancement exception requested to allow deviation from the 10-foot build-to line from Embarcadero Road and Bay Shore Road, and deviation from the height limit requirement to accommodate elevators for rooftop access. A request to apply the automobile dealership AD zone overlay is also being considered separately by the Planning and Transportation Commission. Environmental assessment, an initial study, and mitigated negative declaration are being prepared. Zoning District CSD, Service Commercial and Site Design Review Combination District. Okay, can we get the staff report?
Thank you again, Sheldon Osling, contract planner, project planner for this project. Do have a presentation for you, and the applicant's here to answer any questions that you may have. The project requests includes architectural review by the the board. It also includes site design review because there's the L overlay, it being adjacent to the Baylands. There's also a zone change to allow the addition of the automobile dealership overlay, and that would allow for some different development standards for the dealership. It includes also the design enhancement exceptions, as mentioned, for the height of the elevator overruns, as well as the build-to setback. And so the project would need to go to the ARB, the Planning Commission, as well as the City Council during this process. The project's located at the corner of Embarcadero and Bayshore, and it's, as I mentioned, near the Baylands preservation area. The site plan here does show the footprint of the building. You also have to kind of envision the cantilevered upper stories of the building towards the rear there. That is the service over the service driveway. The project does include an ancillary car wash facility at the rear, as well as some trash enclosures. So those you need to also consider when thinking about the architecture. Along Bayshore Road, there is an 80-foot easement for the PG&E high voltage transmission line. So there is a tower there at the intersection, as well as that is one of the focus areas for this project, including some amenities for bicyclists, and there's been a discussion point in the past for this project. Some of the key issues is to consider the deviation from the build-to setback, and they're doing that because it does kind of make the dealership flow and work better. Also, deviation from the height standard for the elevator overrun. The elevators do go to provide access to the roof where they have parking. So again, it's the integrated dealership that includes the showroom, includes service, it includes some inventory parking as well as customer parking that would be accessible via valet. The adjacency to the Baylands and trying to understand that context. There's some sensitivity there with lighting as well as massing. And that leads into the architectural design and context of that site as well as around the surroundings. And the applicant has sent the ARB a letter regarding responses to the past comments. So the next steps would be to complete and circulate the environmental document. It's anticipated that its initial study and mitigated negative declaration would be circulated soon. There'll be conduct a hearing with the Planning Commission regarding the site and design overlay. To receive formal recommendation from the ARB, and then both of those recommendations would go to the City Council when they would evaluate the project. So the motion is to recommend that the ARB conduct a public hearing and provide some feedback. There's no formal action necessary at this time. That concludes my presentation. If you have to answer any questions, as well as the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You know the drill. You've got 10 minutes.
Yes, sir. Hopefully I can do it less than that. I don't know if I need to, first thank you for the invitation. I sent you the electronic version. You don't have it for the screen? Does everyone have a copy on them? Okay. Should I start with the response letter to the ARB, or do you guys all have copies of that? I don't know if you had an opportunity to read through those.
Sure, why not?
I'm sorry. So just quickly, the sort of 5 points that came up from the previous conversations, the corner element, the emphasizing an emphasis on the context in the illustrations that were provided, and then through the exterior details, some specific details about building fenestration, depth of windows, shadow, a little more information about the materiality of the building. The fourth, which is the proposed height. And the fifth was inclusion of the public art. So what I'd like to do is we could just run through this pack real quick and then come back to anything you may have specific questions about. So this is arranged. There was a comment in our previous presentation about the landscaping and the indigenous plant varieties and so forth. So we asked our landscape architect to come back and do a visual graphic which illustrates all of the product selections and species. and then give a determination on the amount which was in fact a native plant material. So through doing the assessment and I believe did make some modifications to it, we are running at about a 78% of this are native plant materials. So that was one of the comments and concerns. The corner condition, which through multiple meetings has kind of varied back and forth between the degree in which it sort of partook of the Baylands aesthetic with rusticated steel, wood, and so forth, versus the dichotomy of that against a modern building. I guess the position at this point, and I know we've gone back and forth, there's been several comments from the ARB, so we've maybe followed direction one way, and then there's maybe a shift in thoughts in a different direction. As we've illustrated now, because there's been no formal feedback from the individuals at forestry and so forth, who specifically kind of really rallied around this sign element, we've basically taken the Baylands aesthetic, the posts, chains, and so forth out of the corner element. We've actually illustrated this showing a board form concrete, so we want to keep a modern material with the concrete gray tone form, steel plate, but actually eliminate the wood and the chains and the bollards. So as it's shown on the corner, we've shown as a placeholder the Fletcher Jones. Fletcher Jones is ultimately the client at this point. Mercedes-Benz restricts the use of their name in any way on the actual facility. That's more of a corporate brand standard aspect from the manufacturer side. They believe as a partner in the community and a new business in the community that they would like to begin to establish themselves in name. So we've identified this as Fletcher Jones. It wouldn't follow the LLC or the acquisitions or all of the legal entity names. We'd probably find the way that they want to characterize themselves in the market and use that on the corner. There has been, and also in that same rendering on that page, some tweaks to where the glass placement is on all of the insets in the windows to push that further back. We went back and looked through some of the technical details to see exactly how much relief we can get in those facades. We've tried to enhance those. Sorry, these are not numbered adequately for you. The following 2 pages show some more images with the contextual, showing the Audi dealership, which is actually I went by this morning, is actually coming along pretty well, showing that in context with where our building would sit. A couple different views in pure elevation and some rendered forms that show that in context. The page on the right, which is showing the Eye Institute opposite across the street, trying to show a little bit more. This is a very challenging street to get a single vista which picks up both buildings. You have to be pretty far back, and it has to be right at the right time of year that some of the leaves have fallen off the trees to really get a clear line of sight across the two. But it does show the massing of the Eye Institute is actually much more similar to our building. It's simply further back off the street, so I think the perception of that building is probably a bit smaller. The page which I say is got the prominence of the tower designated right in the front. It appears we have an obelisk built on our site, unfortunately, from this photo. That's the way the tower kind of appears. Again, showing the overall mass between the two buildings. These pages all really illustrate, were meant to show the context of the building, the adjacent properties, the heights of them, and then from a street perspective, we have very dense trees in close proximity to the street, which is going to eliminate quite a bit of the view of the building, frankly, in close proximity to it in the intersection. We provided the architectural elevations. We tried to make these a little bit larger for you this time around. We wanted to focus on the actual section details, which got into the actual articulation of the materials, how they come together. I think that was one of the issues. In rendering white, silvers, and light colors, they tend to all kind of become a bit homogenized, I suppose. I mean, it's hard to get anyone who can render it in lifelike form, given the quality of light that you get from the natural sun and time of day and so forth. So we did include some images of what these look like enhanced with large section symbols, identifying some additional horizontal louvers and shading devices which would give a bit more articulation on the facade. And then there's a page which we had to go and we found kind of examples of these materials that's this page here, which has got the metal corners and articulations for the ACM to try to show those in sort of a built form, photographed rather than rendered on our buildings. The car wash was addressed in this package and this most recent submission. This deals with the facade on all four sides. So despite being, having a pretty heavily tree-lined division between ourselves and the next adjacent commercial building, we've gone ahead and taken the materiality of that around all four sides to enhance that car wash building as another component on the site. And the signage has been included to a little bit better illustrate how the brand signs work with the Mercedes-Benz program, style, connections, details, and so forth. These are a fairly standardized set of construction details they use across all of their buildings. So they could make unique connections or details if we would like them to, but we ask them because when they have to come back and do a review for design, so that they did not have to come to the ARB, as we asked them to put their standard details so we could identify if there were any problems up front with the way their signs were connected to the building. So some of those details were shown here in this pack. The balance of it are the drawings. I think to go back to kind of the meat of the discussion last time is looking at the building height, looking at the elevator overruns, and trying to create a building form which would facilitate the operation of this building successfully. Running the elevators to the top floor is an absolute necessity. There's scenarios where they could simply be eliminated. However, the detriment of the overall functionality of the building, it would be very challenging to offer that as a concession to simply try to reduce the height for the elevator. So we would eliminate the use of an entire floor. One of the things that we did is we did have, between the ARB meeting and today, we had a meeting with the art committee, and we tried to talk about one of the last topics, which was, had the inclusion of public art, which sides of the building were they engaged in the surface where people would engage them on a pedestrian level, or could it possibly be engaged into the facade of the building, elements of the building? We did bring up the facade, which includes one of the elevator overruns, which is more prominent, and we discussed whether or not in being consistent with some other art proposals around the city, how those surfaces could be used potentially as the surface on which the public art was incorporated. So there's no determination yet on how the public art would be incorporated. We've begun that process with a committee. We're going to be engaging the city as the project manager and liaison with working with with a designer for an art piece. And but there was interest in both the ground plane and the building surfaces as a possible sort of canvas for that art installation. So I'll conclude with that and take your questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, I tell you what, let's start with the public hearing. I have one speaker card. That's for Herb Vorak. Herb, if you want to come on up and go ahead. Go ahead.
I hesitated to come up, Chair Goodyear, because the applicants seem to think that this is their permanent place when they're here before a project, and they're not instructed to sit down when their time is up. I've come to speak to you on this project, but unfortunately I can't talk about the project itself because you don't have the environmental review before you. Under the municipal code, you have two types of applications that come before you. You have a preliminary application for preliminary review that can come before you before the formal application, and then you have a formal application, and under the current procedures, you have a limited number of times you can have formal reviews before another process goes forward, whether it goes to the director or the director can take it from you. Over time, staff has invented new procedures without changing the code. For example, preliminary review has essentially been abused in the past by applicants coming before you with complete project details. So staff invented a study session. And as this project, for example, has both of those. It had a study session. Nobody paid an application fee for that I'm aware of. And then it had a preliminary review, and your last meeting was called a formal review. And so this is your second formal review. And under your procedures, you would be expected under your third formal review to make a recommendation. But in neither of these two formal reviews have you had a copy of the environmental review before you, which are required when you're reviewing projects. Staff gets around that by writing a staff report that says, well, they're not asking for a recommendation under these formal reviews, although under the code, when you have a formal review, you can make a recommendation. So my concern here is that this is an important project in an important area of the city with numerous changes. And as a citizen, it's difficult for me on my own to do the analysis that I would expect to see in an environmental review document that should be available at each formal review hearing. Otherwise, it's not a formal review. And I don't know how to correct that. And I'm certainly not asking you as a board to be the ones to correct it. But since this is the first project that I've had an opportunity to see this on, although I note the same procedure essentially is being followed in the previous project. And as you'll see in my comments on the next agenda item, that the environmental document is extremely important in helping to determine what's going on and enabling the public, at least, to comment. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about this project.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion. Wynn, you want to start?
Sure, and at some point I would like staff's response to Mr. Borak's comments on procedure. Thank you for coming back to us. Thank you for the new drawings. Thank you for the inclusion of the, what do we call these, pylons? In them. It's interesting because today we have two projects in the Baylands. And one of them is a city project and one of them is a private project, but they're both affected by the Baylands standards. I happened to be at a meeting yesterday where Enid Pearson was talking about how Utah Construction was ready to fill this all in and turn it into the Palo Alto Industrial Park when the citizens rose up in anger and stopped it. So it's a complicated, contested space, and certainly, although we talk about the natural features and qualities of the Baylands, this is an area that's been affected by humans for thousands of years, and even more dramatically recently. But enough of the soapbox. Looking at, gosh, are there page numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th sheet. I do think that one of the things it says in these various Bayland guidelines is that we're characterized by treeless, serene, simple landscapes. And I really do think you've come up with something that's much more attractive in terms of your landscaping. I'm glad you got rid of the sort of chart house details around the edges. And I like the simple, serene, and probably geographically appropriate planting. I think it's terrific. Excuse me.
This is not showing the trees.
I realize it doesn't show the trees. I realize it's not truly treeless, but you're showing us the building and that stuff down there, and I like it. A lot of problems with the rest of it. When I look at the guidelines for the area, they talk about being horizontal, they talk about using natural colors, they talk about using materials that weather nicely. And this, we don't have a materials board, or do we? I suspect this is, and this is a question, it's very high quality glass that's not reflective and that you can see into, as is typical of car dealerships?
Yes, ma'am. We have, it's a low iron glass with the bird film.
Yeah, I'm actually not even worried about the birds. I just like the ability to see through glass rather than having light bounce off it. That I think is good. But I can't understand how the colors that you're using could be defined as natural, knowing that that is a highly artificial term, but I think it has a clear meaning and this doesn't comply. And it also seems to me that this is a building that's taller with its fourth-story parking and attendant elevator than the context really supports. And that combined with its materials makes it not comply with the guidelines. Thanks.
Okay, Peter?
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm more or less in agreement with what Wynn is saying. I think the building is too massive. I think it's getting more massive as we've gone along. When I look at it now comparing to your previous submission and then the first one, it is fully 50 feet tall, plus it's fully a very large-looking presence on the corner there. And I don't even want to get into too many details. I just think it's too massive. The second issue I have is with the elevator. Elevator shaft is too tall. I think it just looks enormous on that site. It has gotten bigger since your previous application, and I'm really confused as to what's going on. I feel
Last meeting?
well, I'm looking at your drawing last time compared to your drawing now, and it's distinctly bigger. And I guess I'm just not sure. We made it crystal clear, I thought, that massiveness was an issue, height is an issue. What I'm seeing now is some attempt to justify that it's no longer a mechanical exception, but rather asking for a design exception. If I address it as that, I'll address my board members. This would be a disaster to start allowing design exceptions for elevators to make a 50-foot tall building 50 feet plus the use of a roof. We're essentially granting another story. The intention of the design exception, of the mechanical screening, is to allow us to improve how a piece of air conditioning equipment looks on the roof, not to allow an elevator, or 3 elevators in this case, to reach the top of a building. It strikes me that you ought to be looking at some sort of ramp system internally so that you can safely bring vehicles to the 4th floor, and you will have to live with the loss of efficiency. I'm sorry, but I just don't see how you can push so hard for so much. So again, I'm trying to look at it openly, but it's bothersome to me. Another point I find is that you are in the Baylands zone, and I see no attempt to even move in that direction. The Baylands requirements are crystal clear in that they're asking for the use of natural materials that blend in with that environment. The Core 10 rusting iron fence you had in the beginning was clearly not appropriate to the rest of the building, but it clearly is appropriate to the Baylands. It also calls for the use of a horizontal design aesthetic, which you have to be honest, when you look at the rendering you prepared with the Audi dealership, that building is horizontal in appearance. It does that much, even if you could argue the materials are not appropriate. But even if I agree or disagree with whether the Baylands designation really applies to this corner, it is done so by statute, and we are obliged to enforce that. And again, I don't see how we could find this building complies with those standards. And I don't even see you moving in that direction, unfortunately. I can go into some more smaller details. I don't at all like the idea of the curved sign on the front now becoming an additional marking for the building. That just takes away further from it being a public facility, the Baylands. There's some of the metal canopy details I'm not finding attractive, but I'd rather turn this back to my other board members, because if I had to vote on it now, I would recommend it be denied. I don't think we're getting any progress, and I think we do you a disservice to have you keep spending money on design when it just may not be the right site for your client. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. I don't want to reiterate too much, but I think, I don't know if it's just the rendering, but I think actually the colors this time around came out a little bit more with the natural tones and the hues of the Baylands. I think the details that you've provided at the section level helped me to understand the materials and how they come together much more than I previously could. But to me, the real big thing is really the design exception that you're asking for with the elevator shaft. And I just don't know that we can get around that. It's really unfortunate. And I really don't know what to say. I think as far as other good things that I see is the addressing of the car wash. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for not having it be just a car wash, but having it really come together with the rest of the building and designing it. I don't think I have too much other to say than that.
Alex?
I have a question for staff. So I know in our, this is about like view corridors. So I know that, I think, as I understand it, in our comp plan, we have a section that outlines where the important view corridors are in Palo Alto. And I was wondering, with regard to the Baylands, is there anything, any scenic vistas here? And the one that I was thinking, the one that I noticed, which was because of the rendering that they included in this from Embarcadero Road, was that you actually, because of the curve in the highway over ramp, the 101 overpass, from the overpass, you actually do see the bay and the East Bay Hills. And it seems like from their renderings and the placement of the, from what I can tell from the placement of the existing building, that this is going to block the view to the bay and the hills. And now, I've looked through the comp plan before. I don't recall that this was ever considered a scenic vista, but I just want to make it clear that this is going to change that particular view. And it seems like, I think it shows in their rendering from, and we don't have page numbers, but it's like this view with the top, with the power line, with the transmission tower in there. But otherwise, the site is not contiguous with any of the Baylands' actual properties, right? It's all surrounded by other suburban office buildings. So anyway, if that is an issue with the environmental review, yeah.
So Board Member Liu, you were saying that, and I agree, I don't have the maps in front of me to know if this is actually a scenic vista, but you were saying from the overpass of the freeway, and so maybe what we can do next time is make sure that we get sort of a view from there into the plan set.
I think they've done it. I think they have a view, and actually in visiting the site, it seems to me that that could be an issue. And then I think just even beyond that, even if it isn't a scenic corridor, I think just from a design point of view, you've got the stair tower, which is a very strong vertical element, which seems to go against the Baylands, and then it's black, which is against all of our Baylands design guidelines. And then you've got a lot of glass too. So at night, it's going to be a fairly bright beacon. So I have issues with that. Yeah, I don't think that if I had to vote on this now, it would be a no for that. I think on the just in terms of compatibility with your neighbor, with the neighboring buildings, a lot of those existing concrete tilted buildings have this sort of fake mansard hip roofs. So that would be one way of making the building a little bit more compatible with the neighbors. It's not a very sophisticated design move, but it's one way. I think the neighbor to your right, I think I have this, is a 2-story office building. And it shows in your East Bay Shore Road elevation. It's like concrete, and it has like deeply recessed windows with angled sills. And it seems to me like you have a little bit of that in your design, right? On your, you added the nice recesses on your 3rd floor window, right at the corner. Again, if it were more angled, if we had more of them, you would add more depth to the building. You would establish some sort of design linkage to your neighbor. But then you've made them black, as I recall, or they're very, very dark. So you're making a very high contrast design move there, which is against the Baylands design guidelines. I think you have the ribbed metal up on the top floor, and I think the building across the street has that on their mechanical screen. So you've got like texture and that's similar to your neighbors. Theirs is green and yours is silver. I don't know if that may not make a difference. But they tied it in, their green is also tied into like the hip roof and the window glazing and the spandrel panels, and it's really sort of integrated in. And I think there's an element of your design here, which I think, I don't know how to say it, but it's just, sometimes I think it's just proportions are very awkward. Like one element will be 2 stories, and then something else is 3 stories, and something else is 1 story, and it's all very choppy, and that seems uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. The buildings in the neighborhood may be very bland and boring, but they just sort of, they do one thing, and that's all they do, and they're just quiet, and they sit in the background. And it seems like there's something in just proportions of things that doesn't seem quite, it's not ideal in my mind. So that's where I am. I think all the other revisions, the landscaping, look good, especially at the corner. I like it simple. I was sort of objecting to the bike station, repair station last time, but the last time I went to the site, I did see all the bicycles actually on the sidewalk going right around that corner. So I'm actually fine with the placement of that there. And then I think my other comment is just on your packet of drawings. And I think because this is going to PTC and council and everything, I think like renderings like this have to show the trees. So like you're keeping all of the existing street trees. And so I think you have to show those. And if you want to show one with just your building, that's fine, but just then include 2.
Right.
And if it's for the ARB, I think it's okay to show 2, because architects like to look at the building too. But then anything else that goes to the council or something, I think it should only show the landscaping and don't show anything without trees, because it can be misread. I've seen it happen. It's very damaging for the project. So just don't do it. I know architects want to do it. You want to show off your work, and that's fine. But
well, I think we wanted to just make sure we could get to the elements of the architecture.
Yeah,
I mean,
I understand.
Hopefully our landscape plan kind of bridged the gap on what it is.
The other thing you can do is, if you're presenting to the PTC and council, is that if you have like a PowerPoint, just show one right after the other. Show them in sequence, so it's very, very, very clear. But to me, that's really critical. And then if you can, I think, because there's you're requesting a DEE for the build to line, I think in your site plan, it would be good to show more of the adjacent neighbors. You're showing a little bit of it, but I think really what you want to do, what I'm trying to emphasize is that the existing buildings are not aren't being built to the build to line.
Okay.
Right, I mean, the setbacks are in the order of 100, 200 feet or more. And so I think you want to make your case that you're for that.
Okay.
So, so that's where I am on this. But it would be a no mostly for materiality and some of the proportions of the building elements.
Thank you. I've been on the board now for a while, and this building is probably the toughest that I've seen so far, in the sense that I understand your problem is that all the various car companies, or at least seem to have, they're coming up with a design guidelines for their own buildings. Chevy has that sort of a blue and silver. Nissan has the red and silver. Tesla has the red, and Mercedes has the similar to the other one up in Redwood Shores, that sort of thing. This whole design, and I guess the biggest problem I have is that had this been placed anywhere else I don't think there'd be a problem at all. It's a very, I mean, there are a couple of things that, you know, I may have an argument with, but basically, it's a very sophisticated building. It represents the product that you're selling. The only big problem is from our side of the table, so to speak, is that we can't just approve these things because, hey, we think they're swell and they look good and everything else. We have certain criteria that we have to live with. And one of the biggest, or the biggest problem you've got is the whole Baylands issue. This is not Baylands. I mean, like I said, your biggest problem is that you've got a very nice-looking building in on a piece of property where, be it outdated or whatever the case is, has a restriction on it that it needs to meet the Baylands guidelines. And this doesn't. It doesn't even come close. And like I said, I keep wanting to say, it's not just the five of us here saying we don't like the building, that sort of thing. You're getting direct pressure from Mercedes that they want their building to look like this. This is their image, that sort of thing. And you pretty much saw it from all five of us, or at least four. I haven't said anything yet, but they're ready to vote no on the building the way it is now. So I think basically you've got a couple of options. You need to either go back to Mercedes and say, look, if you guys want this building on that piece of property, it can't look like this. You're going to have to make an exception and say, okay, we can make it look sophisticated, but it still has to be, you know, I mean, if I was looking at this, I would say that the designer doesn't even realize there is a Baylands ordinance. And I'm sure they are, and I'm sure, like I said, you know, it's the pressure, you know. Quite a few of us on this side are also architects. We understand what's like a client saying, look, I want it done this way, I'm paying you guys. And the problem is that, you know, we're looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint that says we have a requirement to make a decision based on these criteria. And even issues such as the tower, we could probably come up with a design, as you said, that either ramped or an elevator with 3 floors, then a ramp on the other, whatever the case is, that would be a doable issue. The whole design, though, is real tough. And I thought I might be one of the, you know, the more negative one of the group, you know, thinking that I had a hard time accepting it the way it is, but it turns out, and that's one I guess one advantage by going last is that you hear all my other fellow mayors, and none of us are ready to even come close to this. So I think you have a very basic fundamental decision to make, or to go back to your client and make, to see if they really want this space. Like I said, had this gone almost anywhere else, I don't think there'd be much of an issue at all. We could work within anything. I mean, that's...
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When we go back to the client, who isn't Mercedes-Benz, the
Right.
client is a private
Right.
owner.
Right.
And Mercedes says that you've provided a complete corporate identity Audi store, which is the direct competition for this product.
Right.
Less than 50 feet away. What were the restrictions or lack of restrictions that allowed Audi to complete, as you would describe, an entirely divergent product? Was it because of its current zoning in the automotive, it was excluded from any of these restrictions of Baylands, or how did, I'm not aware, this is a question more of an awareness for me, is when I tell our client that they cannot have the image that Mercedes is providing, which is very consistent with what Audi is providing, and Audi yet has it being built at this moment. And if that's because it wasn't...
Well, like I said, I wasn't involved in all of the Audi part. Maybe Alex could speak to that a little bit more, but the gist of it basically is it was already a car dealership. And so it was basically a facelift. And yes, you're right. I don't think the Audi, that doesn't really blend, but it is low. It's horizontal or relatively low. If you compare, I mean, that's the one, I guess it's good or bad point about a strict elevation, as you well know. You see that you don't see the buildings as they relate. You literally see how they, and this thing is huge compared to even the Audi dealership. And the Audi dealership, at the time, we were wrestling with the fact that it was large, even by the scale, but the reality of it is it wasn't a whole lot larger than the building that was already there. They just wanted to, you know, make it look more, as you said, high-tech. And a couple of us, you know, were already against that at that point, but it got through. This thing is a brand-new entity. So, unfortunately, it's a tougher restriction. You know, it's not one of these, with the Audi it was already a car dealership that was there. Maybe that shouldn't have been there in the first place. I don't know. That was way before my time. If you have any additional comments to that, but I think that's basically, you know, our hands were somewhat tied on that one, more so than it is here. And also, had you come in with a building that was maybe of the exact same scale as Audi, it probably would have gone a whole lot further. You know, where we go, hey, wait, you know, that's not too bad. Or maybe then it's like, well, we can't give you too much grief because you're probably at a scale maybe a little less than what's already there, that sort of thing. But I mean, like I said, these two are not even close as far as that. That answer your question? It's maybe not what you want to hear, but you could go back to Mercedes and explain that basically there were different criteria in place for that than there are for yours. These weren't both too clean, you know, empty lots or something that was totally, you know, eliminated and then started from scratch.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so you have, I don't know what, you know, usually I like going out here and saying, well, good luck and all this kind of thing, and it's, you've got a tough job ahead of you. I understand that. Yeah. But I think Mercedes and your client need to have a decision to make. Oh.
Just there was a question about study sessions, and I think this meeting is actually showing you why there has been a long-standing history of staff, you know, asking for study sessions so that applicants could get early comments from the ARB so that they're not going off in a wrong direction with a particular project. So thank you.
So I guess I mean, our comments basically are, it doesn't work in this location. Okay, so you're okay with that? All right.
Yes, that's exactly why we came here, is to get those early comments.
Right, okay, all right, so we're on the same.
I have a question for staff. And what is the staff's opinion? Is there a staff recommendation?
I think staff wanted to get our input.
Yeah, I think we absolutely wanted your input. I mean, I think we definitely hear, you know, the massing of the building. You know, they are asking for a DEE, which is, you know, so above and beyond our height limits. So I would agree with you in that aspect. We did allow, you know, sort of the more grays and the modern materials on the Audi building. But I was glad to hear you say, Chair Member, that, you know, had they been that kind of lower scale and maybe still doing the modern, maybe that would have balanced it out. But when you're doing, you know, modern materials and you're doing a large scale building, then it's sort of really out of place.
Yeah, let me just make one more comment, is that, you know, we keep talking about these design guidelines. This doesn't need to be, you know, you don't have to follow that to the nth degree, but it's just, the problem is, it doesn't look like you even looked at them. You know, it doesn't need to look like the tilt-ups down the street with the little mansard roof on them or whatever. You know, I would reject that just out of style issues if you brought something like that in front of us. So that's not the point. It's just that you've got a, you know, it's this massive building that I think is the biggest thing that, and I understand, you know, if you wanted to function properly nowadays, these car dealerships are getting to be quite large based on what you want to do and incorporate everything in there. So, like I said, it's more that issue that we needed to, in our own minds, comfortably say, yes, they've addressed as many points as they possibly could for the design, the Bayland design guidelines, rather than just saying, yes, they followed it to a T. Like I said, nobody wants to see the rusty chains and the, you know, the wood posts for a design for the Mercedes. That just doesn't represent Mercedes at all. Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. We'll take a 5-minute break. Okay?
I think Amy will be back in just half a second.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, wonderful. Good morning. Nice to be back. This application, and I assume you already read the description of it? Okay. This is the second public hearing on the project. It's proposed on a 25-acre site, the Regional Water Quality Control Plant. I have on the screen an image that shows that it will be centrally located. The Planning and Transportation Commission reviewed and recommended the project and the mitigated negative declaration on January 27th of this year. The ARB offered some guidance at a study session in December and offered guidance on areas to focus on for the formal ARB, and here we are now. Changes to the project since December are noted on the report on page 9, and they'll be covered by Public Works staff in their presentation. This staff report provides draft architectural review approval findings, which are, of course, open to your review and edits. The ARB comments on the mitigated negative declaration, particularly the aesthetic section, are also welcome. Department approval conditions are not yet finalized. They will be finalized prior to sending the report to the City Council. The tentative date is March 21st. There is an error in the report that says February 22nd, and that is an error. This report also outlines the Baylands design guidelines on report pages 10 and 11. The focus for sites adjacent to the Baylands, which is the case for this site, is compatibility with Baylands aesthetics and environment. Finally, this report contains sections on the project with respect to the Palo Alto Airport. This is on page 12, and this is mainly for the benefit of the public, following concerns that were brought up just prior to the Planning and Transportation Commission review. Also, there's a note about the CEQA process regarding the adjustments that will be made to the mitigated negative declaration, clarifications basically for the council review and action. And I'll turn it over to Phil.
Thank you, Amy. Phil Bolbel, Public Works Assistant Engineer, and we've got some other people with us today to answer questions and to help out. Jamie Allen is our plant manager. He's with us. Padam is our senior engineer with us. Greg is our architect, and Dave is our design engineer from CH2M. And they're all here to help answer questions. Since we did have a study session on this, I wasn't going to belabor sort of the project itself. Just a quick reminder, we need this dewatering and truck off-haul facility so that we can phase out, eliminate the incinerator. That's the goal. And then for several years, we'll be hauling this dewatered sludge probably to another sewage treatment plant while we get our own digesters in place, which is the hope for ultimate process for Palo Alto. And so I'll not go back through what we did at the study session, picture of our incinerator. This was the long-term facilities plan we did where we showed that brown area as the site for the replacement facilities for the incinerator, and that's exactly what we're doing now. And you can see that there's kind of an open area right in the center, upper center of the plant, and that's where this facility is going. So here's the slide that Amy showed, and it has the building that we're talking about, our dewatering building, right with that big arrow as slightly yellow. And I'm going to just focus on the comments we got from you at the study session and how we've responded to them, and then remind you of how it looks from the various sides. Some of those sides you didn't have too many comments on, but I'll go back through all of the looks, the four sides of the building. And this was our drawing showing the building from different perspectives. That we didn't change that drawing. This is in your packet, and it points out where we did do new things in response to your comments, and I'll go over those, showing you the actual elevations now. But first I wanted to, we didn't do a good job last time, I don't think, of explaining that just last year in 2015, we spent about $1 million on landscaping at the sewage treatment plant, and we didn't show you last time the outline of what was done there. So here's not a detailed drawing, obviously, but the work that we did and completed in 2015. A lot of new plantings, a new path around the plant on the northeast side, and then a lot of internal work on the southwestern side, and we'll be talking more about that because that's the entrance to our plant. That shows the details of the new plants that were installed and the new features. There's the new sign that we put in front at the western side of the facility, and the new artwork that's next to it on the right. So that was part of the public art for that project, and there's some more of the public art that matched it with vines. We'll be talking more about this vine. I personally like it and hope we incorporate some more of it, but we haven't chosen the plant types. So this is the elevation that you guys had most of the thoughts about last time. It's our west elevation. So as you enter the plant from the main entrance, this is the side of the building you see, the western elevation. So the main changes we've made since last time to try to add more interest to the building are that second window, which is the upper window on the second story in the middle. That's new, and it matches one that exists that was in the original design on the right-hand side. So that window is new. These demarcation, those two lines, grooves in the concrete, demarking the first and second stories is new. And then the major new feature are the green screens, which are, that's a product, you've probably seen it before, that's a mesh, a green mesh, and then vines, whatever plants you choose can grow up that. So I think that's a major response to your concern that we do something more interesting with that side of the building. And we're excited about that, and we agreed with you that something more was needed. So let's show you what that, and then we also had discussion about the concrete itself. What would that look like? And this is what we'll be trying to sort of match, because most of the existing concrete at the sewage treatment plant looks like this. This is a shot of one of our existing buildings at the sewage treatment plant, and you can see we've used those grooves. We've, the 4x8 sheets weren't grooved, but they show an outline, and then the holes from the ties are visible. They were filled, but visible. So this is kind of the look that the rest of the building have at the sewage treatment plant, and what we try to achieve with the new building. Here's a shot looking from the entrance. We're just inside the fence, looking east at the west elevation. So there's some existing trees which are in the middle and block part of the view of the building. So you don't see, when you're this far away, quite as well those green screens. Of course, with actual plants on them, they'd be a darker green, and they'd be more visible. But that's what it looks like. This shows, the other thing, last time when we were here, our photos weren't as up to date as they should have been and didn't include our new landscaping in all cases. So this shows what it actually looks like now with newer landscaping in front and some of our new plantings. And again, this is new plantings that we would do, not the previous project, but plants that we would add with this project. So you can see that there are 3 larger trees out in front, some other plants on the western side, the downside of this building. And then there's outside of our fence, there's another row of plants, and we'll talk about that in a minute, plants and trees that would be adding to the screening from the eastern side of the plant. We'll see that in a minute. So here's the east elevation. That elevation didn't change, and we didn't have any comments from you on the elevation itself. This shows, looking at that east elevation from outside the plant, this shows photoshopped in what it would look like now, and where that arrow points down and in front of the building is where these new plants would go that I showed you on the other drawing. There they are again. It's that upper row of plants. So they would be screening better the building from the east side. And here's a picture on the right. This is a photoshopped rendering of what we think it will look like in 10 years after those plants achieve full height and grow up and would, you know, hide the building, sort of. And this also shows on the left-hand side, it's showing you the plants that we added last year. And then on the right-hand side, the diagram is showing you the plants that we would add with this project. So it's been on 3 different slides, but those are those same plants on the right-hand side that we would add this year. And there's just a blown-up drawing photo, again, photoshopped in, showing after 10 years what we think that growth would look like, and basically hide the east elevation of the building. So the north elevation changed. We had some vines shown, but we've now shown this green screen effect. These two, the west and the north elevation, it's the only place where you can kind of be in the plant and see 2 elevations at once. So you can be at that corner and you can see the north and the west. So we made an effort here to tie those 2 together and to use that same green screen material and use the same either vine or mixture of vines. We haven't chosen the plant types yet. Comments welcome on that. So the south elevation, oh, and I didn't show you from the north, from off-site the plant, because you can't see the north side from the outside the plant. There's another building blocking it. Our UV building blocks it. The south elevation, we'll talk about for a minute. Didn't get any comments from you on the elevation itself, but I wanted to show you what it looks like from the Baylands again. So here's looking from our Bixby Park, the old landfill, which is the open area on the eastern or right-hand side of this aerial. Those small, very small photos show you what it would look like from those. But here they are blown up a bit. So our new building is visible. You see it best in that central photo where the new building is photoshopped in, the arrow on the left. And these are shots from various points at Bixby Park. One of our commenters, Herb, raised and that's it again from that lower elevation. Oops. Herb raised the point of, well, what would it look like, though, from the very top of the park? Those were taken down the hill, closer to the building, but not at a high elevation. So point E is one of the highest point, 65 feet in elevation at Bixby Park. So we went back and took a photo from there and photoshopped our building in. And so on the left-hand side is the current look without our new building. And then on the right-hand side, our new building is photoshopped in. And again, this is from 65 feet, and you're much further from the buildings, from the sewage treatment plant now, and you can see the Core 10 in the new building right here. So this is the new building here, sticking up above our existing building. This is one of our existing buildings, and then you see our new building sticking up where I'm got the arrow right now. So you get up higher and you do see more of our existing, more of the new building. So that's all I was going to show you. We can come back to any of those drawings, needless to say, as you have questions.
I think we've got a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll open it up to the public. We have one card right at the moment, and that's for Herb Borak. Herb?
How much time do I have, Chair? How much time do I have to speak? How much time? What?
Yeah, there's only one speaker.
Well,
Okay, that's fine.
No, tell me, I don't have a number here. I need to know how much time I have to speak.
It's traditionally you have 3 minutes.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
Okay.
Thank you. Chair Guria, just briefly on on the environmental, in terms of greenhouse gases, the PowerPoint slides seem to have gaps in years, so I would request that be filled in on the missing years on 2006 and 7, and moving the explanatory text up in years 2015 to 2018 so that you have a complete bar chart for the greenhouse gases. In terms of the landscaping, even without the views that I requested, you can see from the south side views that landscaping that was installed a long time ago does not provide protection from existing parts of the plant. So although we have nice simulations and a condition to maintain it, I don't know whether it's the type of landscaping that's planted or the soil that it's in or what, but it needs some kind, how can we get assurance that it will do what we said it's going to do? And I feel that recently there was an experiment planting some evergreen, some eucalyptus, and others that didn't work out. Normally, when you have a project, just as in the previous ones, you're willing to consider, changing what it looks like in terms of bulk and mass to meet your guidelines. But here, what's inside is really a given, and you're looking at, just a box to make look better from the outside. And so when it goes to council, I think we need more explanation, because this is supposed to be the first component of a multi-component process. So my first request in my mind was, why is the building so big? The existing belt filter presses are, I don't think, even labeled on the plans. I think it's where the sludge dewatering and odor control equipment is, which would be next to where the public will assemble for tours of the plant. But basically, you're taking what's part of a continuous process and making it a batch process for loading the trucks with the cake of the sludge. And my question would be how many truckloads of storage you would have on the roof, considering possible disruptions, either in the fact that there's a movement away from having sludge being moved from one county to the other, and that the price of all the alternative places to use it keeps on going up. And for the natural disaster, like an earthquake, if the transportation network isn't available, how much can you store in it? Right now, it would be 2 to 3 truckloads a day, but at maximum capacity of the plant, it would be 5 truckloads a day. So how many truckloads can be put up there, and do you need more space? Thank you.
Thank you. Good stuff.
Yeah, I'll ask maybe Jamie to address how much storage we have in the case of an emergency. How long could we not truck the material?
Well, depending on, if the bins were completely empty, we have 3 days of storage, and that would get us through labor strikes, holidays when the hauler's not hauling, and things like that. So that was the design we picked for how much storage. 3 days of sludge storage.
Okay.
And, okay.
Any other questions from, I'll bring it back to the board.
No, I do have a question, not about the sludge, though. What is the proposed new green screen in more detail? What plant grows on it, and how is it maintained? I see just the words modular trellis system on the drawings, and it seems an important aesthetic feature.
I'm sorry, we were conferring.
I'd like to know what the green screen feature is in more detail. What I see here is of the words trellis system, and I see a detail of the mechanical part of it, the green metal. What plant grows on that?
Well, we were, one of the main ones that we're considering is that honeysuckle that I showed the picture of that we have on a different trellis. So the plant folks want to consider this further, but here's the one that's doing well, right adjacent. It's this honeysuckle. It's got a red flower really almost all of the year.
Wynn, you had a comment or a question?
Oh, I had a couple of questions. One was, I read with interest the discussion about odor control and ammonia formation and whatnot. And I was looking at page 3-7 of the evaluation of environmental impacts, and it describes what the Air Quality Management District does, which is if you complain enough times, it investigates. But what's our own on-site protocol for dealing with possible error? I mean, surely, I realize people who work there, their noses become desensitized, but what's our process for making sure this is not objectionable, this is not a source of objectionable odors?
Yeah, well, we definitely test for H2S. That's the main thing you worry about is hydrogen sulfide gas. And we test to make sure it meets OSHA requirements regardless of the level of smell. There's 2 issues, right? There's smell and then there's actual harm. Mm-hmm. So the OSHA requirement is based on harm, and we test to make sure that we're meeting the OSHA requirements for H2S on site. We've been fortunate, we have sewage sludge on site that's undigested that we're moving around currently. So this is not, having sewage sludge that's undigested is not a new thing for us. And we've been very fortunate. We have very few complaints. I can't even think when the last time we had a complaint was from the public, from somebody outside the facility or our own people. Jamie, do you have any?
It's been years.
Yeah. So I shouldn't say we've been fortunate. I think we've done a good job. And therefore, we
and
just
do you
don't
have
get
feasible
complaints.
options if odor problems do arise? I mean, the objection was you can't just say at an EIR or a negative deck rather that we'll figure that out if the time arises.
No,
Are you
no. I
confident
mean,
there's adequate technology?
There's 2 systems that are designed to prevent an odor problem. Who's best to describe that? Jamie, do you want to?
Yeah, we have a biotrickling filter to take the foul air and run it through like a wet media filter, and the microorganisms break down the hydrogen sulfide and any odorous compounds, and then it's polished off with an activated carbon to bring down 99.9%, is it? 99.9% reduction in each, well, 99% reduction in each unit to meet Air District requirements, and this is a tested design that the Air District will approve.
So you're confident this isn't going to smell bad?
Right.
Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead and start then?
And thank you for the new drawings and points of view. I wanted to talk about landscaping. My colleagues are all trained to read drawings. I'm trained to read texts. And people who deal in design often drive me berserk with their use of text. But just to start out, it says here that we're going to have a use of drought-tolerant native and non-native California plant materials. I didn't know if that meant California plant materials that are native and not native to California, or the more accurate description would be you're going to use drought-tolerant materials. It has nothing to do with their native or non-native. When I go on and read this, what you have is a little island of the South Pacific here, or the Big Island. You've got New Zealand and Australia as your principal contributors, generously assisted by South Africa, a little bit from the Mediterranean. So clearly this is not, we've just had an interesting, which is lovely. I'm not arguing that you should undo the work you already did at great expense, but it does seem to me that the way this is being presented to us is a little confused and confusing. So basically the plan here is what? I mean, it's not about California natives. It's not about, as far as I can tell, it's not about great habitat for local beetles and butterflies and moths. So what is our philosophy here?
Well,
Trying
I'd say
to put it
there's
into the
a
Baylands
couple of
plan.
main objectives. One main objective is to have something that's going to be visually pleasing for a large percentage of the year, and it's going to be a size that is going to hide, frankly, as much of the facility as we can. That's a goal. To be drought tolerant is a goal. So when
to
you
survive in the Baylands is a goal.
Yeah. So those are our main objectives, and they don't always add up to, we don't always find a native. That's why it says native.
I don't expect you to. I'm
Yeah.
all in favor of that. I would prefer you didn't reference it in the document as a goal.
That's a sort of, I guess I'd call it a sub-goal. I mean, we want to try to maximize natives, but we've got these other objectives, the size of the plant, looking good all year, so we have to balance those objectives.
So I think I understand that even, the landscape is described as, open, serene, and treeless. Clearly that's not going to do for screening our water treatment facilities, and clearly you have a well-established pattern there, which involves, the great California tradition of importing stuff from elsewhere. My principal, I had two concerns. One was, and I'm interested to hear from my colleagues on this, the shape of the trellises or the screens that would hold up vines on the building itself didn't make a lot of sense to me. And when I was looking at the design, it seems to me that one of the more important views that's going to be affected by this project is the one down the driveway. You've got a good picture of it. You showed it to us. Forget which one it is. Focuses on rampant weeds in the front. Looking down the drive.
You mean the one looking down the driveway?
Yeah,
there
exactly.
It was, Amy.
And that's
There.
identified in the description of the landscaping plan as one of the areas of landscaping, but I didn't see any description of what was going to go there. And it does seem like an important, at least that drawing. I mean, can you help me relate that picture to this drawing?
Yeah. So these are the new plants.
Right.
Phil, if you go back, those are not weeds. That's part of our the $1 million landscaping. That's a
Right.
ground cover.
So,
That's all a new ground cover. Those aren't weeds.
what is it?
I don't know the name of it. I'm not a plant person, but
Yeah.
it's not weeds. It's part of our new landscaping.
Right.
And
And
it's
is this-
maintained by the city's.
All of that.
And is this
new.
outside of the scope of this project because your drawings start beyond that?
Yes, they do. So our drawings start, I'll try to. Okay.
What I'm getting at is it did not seem terribly well integrated.
Right. So the new ones are the ones that Amy's showing, and they're right in front of the building. So if you want to go back, Amy, to the photo, so they are, all of that stuff is actually just beyond that very large roundish tree that's blocking the building, that tree. So all
they
of that
won't be
new
particularly
stuff,
visible from the street?
it won't be very visible from the street except for the green screen itself. And you can see the green screen is surrounding that one doorway. That'll be the most visible thing from the street. The new plants won't be very visible at all from the street. Of course, remember, this is a dead-end street. The only people that will be here will be people coming into the sewage treatment.
But this is the entry?
Yes.
And you're planting arbutus, unido, and you're planting a lot of other, I guess you're planting...
The planting that you see in front...
And that's picking up on the plants you already have on the site elsewhere, is that right?
Yes, it's integrated in. It's done by the same landscape architect, Siegfried, and it was planned in conjunction with one another. What you see, the green that you see here, except for the tall eucalyptus trees, is all new. It was all part of this $1 million project that went through ARB about 2 years ago and was finished last year.
Okay, well, so my comment was going to be that it would be good if the new landscaping integrated with this and you had a sense of the whole thing fitting together. I can't tell that from the plans that we have.
Well, I don't know how to make you feel better about that.
That's okay. It's the way it is. And you're thinking of putting bright orange on the building itself, right?
You mean the Corten?
Yeah. No, bright orange plants, the Cape honeysuckle.
Well, the flowers are, I would call it reddish.
It's a beautiful plant. It has pulled down more than one of my fences. Okay, so my comments, I have nothing to say that would recommend that we change this. It seems to be an approach which isn't particularly anticipated by the Baylands documents, but clearly one that's already well established on this site.
Peter?
Thank you. I can support the project as it is. I'd like to make a couple of quick notes. One is that I had been concerned, I think several board members were, about the Corten steel possibly staining the concrete. I appreciate your detail. I'm going to read the number of the detail. It's tricky, so staff can be sure that that's incorporated in the future. It's detail 1080024. It shows 1080024. It shows the Corten screening set back behind a small concrete parapet, which would keep water from draining on the face of the building. I'm just trying to emphasize to planners when they review the drawings that it's very important that it be kept that way. There's a similar detail not shown in the drawings, but I'll assume it's going to be designed in the same way. That's 1080023. It's referenced on the plans, but I don't see it in the plan set. I'll take it on faith that it will be done that way. The elevations show the Corten, that's the parapet at the very top of the building. But again, it's imperative that that be set back from the edge of the concrete. We'll otherwise just have a very unattractive thing.
Yeah, we're tuned into that principle. Greg can speak to that if you'd like.
No, I think we're doing plenty of talking. I just want to be sure it's in the record so Amy and her staff have a chance at just catching it. So there's a lot of paper here and it's hard to find that detail. I'm not in favor of the green trellis. I think that in concept it's a good idea, but I'm afraid in execution it may end up being a dead plant. And I think the building is fine looking for what it is without that additional feature. If I can, just as a means of comment, say, I think it was my comment originally that you have an opportunity. You have this big truck gate down the end of this long road driving in. You can architecturally do something with it like a trellis or a canopy over the door. You could be playful, make a mouth out of it, and any number of things that would just sort of say what you're doing here or be fun about it. But it wasn't intended to be something that isn't any way you have to do. I think the building is cleaner without the green trellis on it, but I can support it either way. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my only comment would be regarding the green screen. It just looks too slapped on, and I think the way that it's drawn in the drawings, there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason for the exact shape of the curb, and the distances that they are from one another, as well as the amount that it's held off from the ground. I agree that the building would probably look a lot cleaner without it, or possibly reverting back to some of the cable vine systems. But I think with the new landscaping in place, I don't think we're going to see a lot of that. So maybe the building can do without it. But even with it, I would be okay with it as far as the approval process. Just wanted to also reiterate the thanks for the details, especially the Corten steel and some of the other areas and components where there was a little bit of clarity lacking, but I think it's been clarified now. Thank you.
So thank you for the revisions to the project, and also I did want to give you kudos for all the photo simulations. Those are some of the best that I've seen in a long, long time. But they're very high quality, and it's very important, out in the Baylands. And then I want to say too, I do also like all the landscaping improvements on the bay side of the project. So I do go running and stuff over back there, and that looks great. Not so crazy about the entrance view of your landscaping. I think other board members have mentioned that. It seems like it's, again, as Wynn was saying, it's missing a big design idea. I understand you've got native plants, and that's fine, but I think what I'm missing is the entry statement, like the big idea for the entrance. And it shows, like when you go, at the end of the cul-de-sac there, you look there, there's a mess of different signs. There's the artwork. You've got 2 different gates. There's an old light fixture there. There's just a lot of clutter. And I think that was the point that we were trying to get at last time. My only real main objection to the project is the green screen as you have it presented. I'm not opposed to green screen. It can get really cluttered, it can get ugly really quickly. And if you start doing in all sorts of funny shapes and different sizes, it's actually really ugly. The cleaner installations I've seen of it are not the green or the black, just the silver colored, no edge what do they call it? They have a little edge. There's some sort of like side panels. And then to work with the architecture of the building, which is the 4-foot concrete panel, the 4-foot concrete module. But I can't support the green and the curves and all of that as it's proposed. But I'm not opposed to it. If there's it seems like it depends on the vine. Like some vines are okay with wires, but some other vines need more support. So whether you go with wire or green screen is going to vary depending on the plant. Seems to me like you're doing 2 different things here. One, like most of the time when we use green screen is to push something in the background, right? Is to cover it with green and let it just sort of fade into the background. But then if you put a plant that has orange or red-orange vines on it, then it's actually popping it into the foreground. So it seems like this is not resolved aesthetically from, like I'm sure it's workable, but the big idea is lost on me at the moment. So I would like that to come back to the board as subcommittee at some point, but I don't have any other objections to the project.
Can I make a suggestion then, seeing as I think we're all sort of in that same agreement? I think the green screen was taken a little bit too literally. Can I suggest, because I agree that the arch really has no relationship to anything, I'd be willing to approve it without that and put the money towards landscaping that's already there. I mean, is everybody willing to?
Can we you're saying just on the west? Because it's also on the
No,
north?
just get rid of the screens altogether.
On both sides?
Yeah, or on both sides.
Is the applicant okay with that?
Sure, we need to move forward with this. I'm shocked, frankly, and personally disappointed, but as we were looking forward to it at the plant. But we need to move forward, so if that's what you're going to do.
I agree basically the same sort of thing is that Alex's interpretation is exactly right. I mean, here, usually you do that to sort of make something disappear, then you're making it punch out. And also...
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we don't need, I said we hadn't selected the plant type. If that's the comment, we can select the plant type.
No, that's just, hang on. The gist of it being just that I think it's, it's an interesting approach, but the building, I think, looks cleaner with just the Core-10 and the concrete, rather than just trying to impose another element. Also, because of the fact that it's somewhat random with the loop or the curve, the way you have it. And the problem is that if this was out in the middle of nowhere, as you have the fern, as you said, or I should say the planting, this is right up against the building where people are going to be walking, everything else, that I have a feeling it's going to end up, at least the lower 10 feet of it or so, it's probably going to end up being a mess pretty soon rather than anything else. So if I could get a motion from someone, I think we'd all like to approve the building. My approach would be just to remove the green screen on the two sides, but I'll leave that up to someone. Can I get a motion from someone?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the building as submitted, with the exception that the entire green screen feature is removed.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Sorry, could you make reference to the architectural review findings in your motion, or?
Okay. I thought I did when I said that. They're all in the staff report, and I support the findings the way they're worded in the staff report.
Okay, so it's 3-2?
And I'm opposed.
3-2 or 4-1? Win?
4-1.
Okay. There you go. Thank you.
You want something here?
Yeah, on their side.
Mm-hmm.
This is north.
Right.
This one had something.
Right.
An idea.
Mm-hmm. You would have referred it to subcommittee to figure out.
I don't trust them to. I don't trust public works.
No, of course not.
Resolve things like this.
Mm-mm.
It's like it's a seemingly simple thing that.
Well, but this is really an example of not resolving.
Yeah.
Just throw them.
Yeah.
There's something, one of the things it does say in here is all landscaping should be tough and easy to maintain, low maintenance.
There's no such thing.
I know. Also, this landscaping plan, which may be admirable, which they spent all this.
This one is for 3225 El Camino Real, request by Hayes Group Architects for architectural review of a new 29,249 square foot mixed-use project, replacing the existing 7,000 square foot retail building that includes 8 residential units and 11,984 square feet of commercial space. The two-building project includes surface parking and 1 level of below-grade parking under the 2- and 4-story structures, providing a total of 74 parking spaces. Project includes a shared parking reduction request of 1%, 1 space, and a design enhancement exception requesting of a 3% reduction to the build-to line requirement. Environmental assessment, initial study, and mitigation negative declaration has been prepared. Zoning district CS Service Commercial. Staff?
Yes, thank you. The proposed project site currently is developed with a 7,000 square foot commercial building and is surrounded by a surface parking lot. The proposed mixed-use project has an 11,980 square foot building with commercial, it's 11,980 square foot area of commercial and 8 residential units, 4 of which are rental and 4 which would be for sale. The project includes 2 separate buildings. The 2-story is 100% commercial, and the 4-story has ground floor commercial and residential above. The project provides both surface and below-grade parking for a total of 74 spaces. The applicant is requesting a shared parking adjustment of 1% to provide 74 spaces instead of 75, and it includes a design enhancement exception for a 3% reduction to the El Camino Real build-to-line requirement. This project is also subject to the recently adopted interim ordinance that limits new R&D and office development to 50,000 square feet annually. When this project was originally submitted, it came in as a site and design review application, and that was because it was a mixed-use project with more than 4 dwelling units. And recently, in early February, we adopted some code changes, and now the site and design threshold is 9, has been changed to 9 residential units. So for this particular project, it is no longer subject to site and design, and it's just going to go through the regular architectural review process. With that said, though, the project in December did go to the Planning Commission for a review following the site and design review process at that time, and the Planning Commission did recommend a unanimous approval of the project. So based upon the project's joint use, I skipped over. There are basically 3 key issues for this project. We have a parking adjustment request, a design enhancement exception, and the consistency with the South El Camino Real design guidelines. And based upon the project's joint use, the planning director can approve a parking adjustment of up to 20% for the shared parking facility. For this project, a 1% reduction is requested to allow 74 spaces instead of 75. The parking analysis provided that was carefully reviewed by staff supports this requested reduction. So for this project, and all projects in the CS zone along El Camino Real, there is a 50% build-to-line requirement. For this project site, 74.9 feet of building mass is required to be placed at the setback or build-to line, which is 12 feet. The project proposes a 47% build-to line, which is a 4.9 foot reduction. And I have a graphic here that kind of tries to explain this a little bit better. So this section here represents the area that is compliant with the build-to line, and it's roughly 70 feet. So it's short by 4.9 feet. And for this project, we didn't include the smaller building in this calculation because it's set back more than 18 feet from the front property line. And the findings to support the approval of the DE are provided in attachment B of the staff report. The project is generally consistent with the South El Camino Real design guidelines. And there are 2 project components that were previously identified that could be further developed for better consistency, and those are the landscaping and building corner details. And the applicant today can provide you in their presentation what they've done to address these particular issues. So upon recommendation of the project, upon recommendation of approval for this project, the project will be forwarded to the City Council for a review, and that's tentatively scheduled in May, and this will be part of the new annual office limit review process. So we're anticipating at this time that maybe we have 5 projects that would be moving forward to go through this new ranking process. So in conclusion, staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board recommend approval of the design review and DEE for the proposed mixed-use project based upon the findings and conditions of approval for the development at 3225 El Camino Real. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have no speaker cards. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this issue? Wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get you up here first. The applicant, you've got 10 minutes.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be presenting the project on behalf of my client, Deanza Properties, who's here in the audience if you have questions. I'm also joined by Gary Lehman of the Gazzardo Partnership to answer questions that you might have. I'd like to thank Claire for helping us bring this application before you. As she explained, the site's the corner of Portage and El Camino. Hanson Way is a key element in the urban context that we're trying to address with the plaza. We provided this slide. I think Chair or Board Member Liu had asked for a larger context site, and I think we have another picture as well. But it's primarily surrounded by a CS zone, which is what this property is zoned as well. It's the Foot Locker site. This is from the north on El Camino. From the south on El Camino, Portage is right over here. This is from Portage looking at the building. The program hasn't changed since you saw it in December. Create a new 4-story mixed-use building with 4 2-bedroom apartments and then 4 4-bedroom condos on the upper floors. Respond to the nature of the site. We're still parking the project mostly in a subterranean garage, and then provide enjoyable living and working spaces for the pedestrians and residents of the facility, and support sustainable systems. This is the larger context for Member Liu. Had asked for this. You can see Hanson Way here, how it intersects the site, and that sort of generated this concept for this outdoor courtyard. When we were here in December, you were generally supportive of the architecture, the site planning, the 2-building concept. I had shown you where we had been before, and thought that this was a great improvement. You were also supportive of this, the idea of the plaza, and the notion of a DEE for the Build 2 line along El Camino Real. You did ask us to go back and study opportunities for engaging the plaza better, for people to use it essentially, and not just be a landscape element. You also asked to look at maybe the glass on the ground floor retail, as well as some other items on the building. So when we went to the Planning Commission, we had a unanimous approval. I think it was the second week of December. This is the site plan that you saw, that they saw, okay? So the changes that we're talking about today really have to do a lot with the landscaping and seating opportunities in the plaza, the definition of the front of the plaza, and in digging further into this, this is all built on top of a podium. And so we felt that driving in from Portage here was not the best experience with all these raised planters 45 inches high. They add maneuverability issues in the parking lot. They tend to clutter it up visually, and they prevent someone from coming in and being able to freely look into the retail space. So we've essentially addressed those and the comments that, yes, this is a new issue that we brought up, and the comments that you have. So everything that just shaded has been changed, all right? And so that includes landscaping we had here and landscaping we had here along El Camino, but these elements in the parking lot and all of the elements in the plaza. The proposed concept coming in from Portage would be to create more landscaping on both sides, essentially, of the driveway when you come in. So we lengthened that. By eliminating the 45-inch high raised planters, we open this up in a better way for maneuverability and also visibility into the retail space, and to provide for the proper shading of the parking lot. We've elected to go to carports that are covered with photovoltaic, building integrated photovoltaic glass panels, and they essentially help us provide the shading that's required. This one here is on the edge of the property. It ties into the trash facility as kind of one element, and then this one here terminates the plaza space. In the plaza itself, we've addressed seating opportunities here, kind of away from the noise of El Camino Real, created some olive trees that come through the site and terminate at a new olive tree out here, where you talked about having some buffer landscape next to the vertical element on the building. And then we have movable chairs, et cetera, back in here. So we're thinking this is kind of the gathering space back from El Camino. This space here, although it's defined by new 30-inch high landscape planters across the front edge of the property at the Build 2 line, this is generally left open because we're thinking that we want to provide visual access into the retail space and not get this area of the site kind of cluttered up. So those are the changes that we've talked about there. And then this is with all the landscaping turned on. So you can, there's been no change to the perimeter landscaping from what you saw before. The site, as you go up, this is the second floor. These are the top of the panels from above. We're creating a landscape opportunity also at the second level, which is kind of the front porch of the units. So when you come into the second floor where the apartments are, we're going to have some landscaping, some seating there. This area is open to the sky. It's covered with the photovoltaic panel trellis above, but we're thinking this becomes a front porch. It could be a place where children could, play on their toys safely. It's about 25 by 32 feet, a little bit smaller than the lobby in front of the, in the City Hall here. No change as we go up in the building. You just see this open space in the center. It becomes a bridge when you get to the third floor, and then it's completely open when you get fully up in the building. This is the fourth floor. In section, and we still have the photovoltaic panels on top. In section, this is what we showed you before. This is the main sort of front porch for the units themselves. The main change here is on the ground floor. We've lifted the building up. We've created transom windows around the 2 sides or 3 sides of the building now, so that lifts the ground floor. And then you can see the addition of the carports at the rear of the site. Just the transverse section here to show the same, and the bridge going across. This is the old one. This is the new one that shows the higher windows. Also, there was some concern, I think Member Liu had some concern about these windows here in the old proposal occurring on both sides of this courtyard, and maybe we should think more about some privacy. So we went back and actually we provided more windows, but made them smaller awning type windows for ventilation, because that was the idea of this space, is to get cross ventilation to all the units up and through, but it also provides opportunity for natural light now at all levels of the apartments and the condo. At the old west elevation, this is El Camino Real. The main difference here is how we've treated the ground floor. We've raised this up a foot. We've created the transom windows across the front. We've added the landscape element tree in this location here and defined the front edge of the El Camino side of the plaza with these additional pots and so on. Staff had a comment about, the guidelines talk about doing special features at the corners. Although this is a special feature, but it's not unique to the building form itself. We really felt like the plaza is the unique element, and that's where we want people to go. So I didn't want to give conflicting messages about the corner of the building. That's not necessarily the main entrance. We want everyone to kind of come into the plaza and then enter the buildings from that plaza, the plaza space. So we've essentially created the additional height on the ground floor and then addressed the landscaping elements there. This is the portage side, and this is really just so you can see the difference between the old and the new. The additional foot of height here with the transom windows, and then the landscaping has changed a little bit here. That's kind of landscaping beyond in the parking lot, but you can also see where the carports have been added. And just from the courtyard side, we've added landscaping down both sides. We've lightened the color of the Parklex siding. It was a comment that you made from the dark. Now, it was never going to be that dark. You have the old color board probably, but this is the lighter color, which I think you have updated elevations that were provided this morning that show the actual color in a better way. And then this is the other side of the courtyard before and after with the raised windows, and we have a planting edge running down that side as well that we did not have before. Just the street view to show you the transition. I know the FGY project has been pulled at this point or expired, but perhaps someday it'll be resurrected. But obviously creating the mass on the corner makes a lot of sense. And then this is the portage frontage. You wanted to see some additional views of the courtyard. So here's entering the courtyard as if you were a bird, but we know we're not going to fly in, but this gives you an idea of the context. So down in the plaza itself, this is the edge of the front planters along El Camino Real. And then in the back is the seating area, and then we've introduced these planters with the olive trees in them that kind of march through the space. What's not shown here are the bollards that kind of go through the space as well. But you can see the raised windows, the bridge above, et cetera. And then this is looking back out towards El Camino, where we plan on having this is the seating area again in the back, and then the bridge in front. We didn't change these from the last time, but we did ask the renderer to have the trees turned on and off. I think Member Firth wanted to see what it looked like with both ways. And so there they are off, and the trees back on along El Camino. So we're not showing the olive tree that is now here. This was really just to show you the street edge. And then the same thing at the corner. These are Chinese pistache on Portage, and then they are the London plane trees on, and we're showing them both the same, but on El Camino to be consistent with the El Camino Real line of trees. And the materials essentially the same. We have the porcelain tile base. We have cement plaster. The window frames on the residential are the darker color. On the ground floor and on the commercial space, that's the anodized aluminum. And we still have the perforated metal sunscreen on El Camino Real in this area of the building here, but we removed it from the north side of the building. So that side doesn't have it because there's no need for it from a sun standpoint. That's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions and look forward to them. Oh, I forgot. The owner wanted to say something. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is John Vidovich.
I thought you were going to run out of time, Ken. My name's John Vidovich. We're the sponsor of the project, and we're very happy with Ken's work. Ken worked with Kathy, and she put him through a lot to do things here. I just want to point out a couple things that we put into the project, and one, we are renting to a lot of children now, people with small families with young children, and the courtyard in there was, one of the solutions that we really thought was important because it's an enclosed courtyard that's open to the air, so that if you have the young children from, say, 3 to 7 or 8 years old, they have a place to go outside. It's on the El Camino. That is always an issue, and it was a big deal that we were able to solve. The other thing is, he said photovoltaic panels. They're not the typical solar panels that you see, that they don't, they block the light out and they're not that good looking. This is a glass panel made in Germany. I don't think it's here at all. It's not that efficient. You can see through it, but it does provide solar. But visually, from our standpoint, we think you have to use a lot more to get solar, but visually, it's a completely different look. You're getting the light completely through it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll turn it over. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address this board on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Peter, you want to start?
Sure. I'm trying to understand that we're asking for a 1 parking space less exemption. And I guess the question for the applicant, why not find room for 1 more space?
We actually added 1 space when we took out the raised planters.
Right.
So we were asking for, I'll give you the longer answer. We have an area on the site that is reserved for the first hours of the day. There's 5 spaces that are reserved for unloading. So we actually have the study. I thought our request was going to be to include those in the request, so we'd be asking for 6. But staff sees those as only being unavailable in the morning, so now all we need to ask for is the 1 space. So if you want to see them on the site, I can show you.
I guess I'm just trying to understand why, when you're so close, why why push for it if it's possible in any way to get one more space?
So it's not possible to get one more space.
And you're sure downstairs?
Yeah. We picked up one space. So this area here, remember Balte? Not originally, but just in the last version you saw, had 5 spaces, and this was dedicated after 10 a.m., well, before 10 a.m. as an unloading zone. So when we originally made the application, we were saying that those 5 spaces couldn't be counted, and we were deficient for sure 2 spaces. So we were asking originally for a reduction of 7. In this revision in the last 2 weeks, we picked up a space here because we got rid of the raised planters. So now we have 6 spaces here. Mm-hmm. But this area is still reserved for unloading before 10 a.m. in the morning. It wasn't until I got the staff report that I saw that they're interpreting it as those are available, and we're just deficient 1 space. But we can't get another space. I thought we were going to be deficient 6 spaces.
And as I look at the site plan, Ken, where you have 5 spaces just below the 6, it seems you have a planter which has some sort of structure for the thing, and you can't possibly remove the planter or alter that and fit 6 in that line instead? Just, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of the design, but I don't see why it should be granted an exception. Except
no, it's not an exception.
Well, the director is going to grant you some special treatment because, I don't see why because. So I'm just putting that comment out there. It's not really for us to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but that's what I see. On the other design enhancement exception about the street frontage, I find sort of the opposite. I agree with your argument a long ways back about the planter counting its way out of the street. Right. When I look at the second story, the second smaller building on the right, it has a very large mass up above, which when I scale it off is 18 feet from the sidewalk, and I would certainly count that. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Can you go back to that street view or something?
The street view of the elevation?
Or even this commercial one right here, if you look at the dashed line indicating the second floor up above.
Yeah, well,
smaller building.
The dash
right
line's
there.
here.
I scale quickly that dash line is 18 feet from the property line, and that gives me comfort to say that there's quite a bit of visual mass meeting the build-to line or getting out close to it.
And our original argument was that the planter provided that definition because the definition of the build-to line says that it couldn't have planters and minor plazas and still be considered the build-to line.
Again, my feeling is that we can support, or I can certainly support that exception, the design enhancement exception. So then the bigger thought I have is really more to do with the plaza across the front half of the plaza on El Camino, and I'm wishing there was some way to close it off a little more from El Camino. I understand that you have this Hanson Way across there, and your design and intention originally was to try to capture that as a response from across the street. But everything I'm hearing about children playing there, looking at the renderings and such, knowing what El Camino is like, it'd be much nicer if you could somehow get a more comfortable
we're thinking the children are playing here, remember Balte, on the second floor.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's like the front porch of the units. And it's outdoors, it's covered with this trellis, and it's secure. We weren't thinking they'd be playing here. I'm happy to have Gary Lehman. Yeah, that was the one I just showed.
Yeah. I still feel that, to me, the question really is the front half of the plaza out on El Camino.
Okay.
And when I look at that, I look at the renderings of it and your very nice bird's eye flying view, which is attractive. It seems to me that's going to be the dead half of the plaza. What you've done in the back half with the seating, the planting beds, sort of little corners and nooks for people to hang out and to be in, that will succeed as a plaza that people like to be at. The front half seems to me, for whatever reason, I don't know, more abandoned, more just to be a pass-through space.
I'm happy to have Gary offer you his thoughts on that.
Well, I'm just putting it out there, and my other members will have their own thoughts on it. But other than that, I can make the findings to approve the project.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming back with the project and the refinements. Yeah, that one parking spot it's too bad. I know, parking really isn't in our purview per se, but other than that, I think you've made the revisions that we've kind of asked for, and I'm very much appreciative of the ground floor open plaza redesign and lowering of the planters out by the parking. I think the the elevated courtyard for the residences makes sense, and I would have no problem supporting the DEE for the build to line exception for that smaller commercial building. And I think I could support the project the way it is right now.
Great, thank you.
As far as the parking, I know on the previous project that you presented that there were some parking elevator systems, double-story stacked parking. That's just something that we can't do here in this case?
To get one space, it would be so we don't have any elevator or lifts in this project.
It's just a single story of parking underneath.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so to do it for one space wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, this is a perfect project for why they have the up to 20% reduction allowed for mixed use.
And I can't remember based off of my site visit, but do you know if there is street parking along Hanson?
Along Hanson?
Or, I'm sorry, along Portage?
Along Portage.
Yes.
Yeah, uh-huh. And
So
we're getting
there
rid of
is parallel parking all along Portage.
And we're getting rid of, there are 2 driveway cuts currently, and the one that is nearest
Closer
the
to the
corner is
retail is
being
being taken out.
eliminated. Yeah.
Okay.
And we originally wanted that to be the unloading zone, but it's going to be parking. So I know we can't use public parking.
Is that it for you?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you.
Alex?
Say on Portage, some of it is red. And I think that just may be maybe truck turning for some of the retail stores. It's not continuous parking on both sides. There's some on both sides down the length, but not, it's not all parking. Okay, so thank you for the revisions. I think particularly in my mind the parklex, the taller, the clear story windows, I think are huge, and the olive trees instead of the Japanese maples. Those are all, and the planters, I think are all good changes. So thank you for that. And I can support the DEE for the build to line because of the courtyard. And I think I think most of the things that I have are really nitpicky. So I think one is, well, I guess I have a question first. How do you envision the retail space to work? I know there are different tenants, but is there a general concept of how it could work in?
Yeah, I think, generally he'd like to find a single user, right, that would have, maybe John wants to talk to this.
I think what I could say is,
And do you think it's retail or possibly dining?
You say dining?
It could, do you have a preference?
We do not see it being any food use there. We see it retail, like the shoe store or something like that. We don't know the tenants, but a restaurant or any type of food use creates other issues that I think we have residential area, has garbage issues, has a lot of issues with services of a restaurant. We do not see a restaurant there at all.
Okay, that's great. That was my concern.
And if I could just add one little element to that is there would be an increase in parking as well if it was a restaurant.
Yeah, parking. And then also restaurants have early morning deliveries, trucks, and then your trash area is sort of remote, right? And so normally there's like a back kitchen door that's usually sort of unsightly. And in this particular building, everything is like a front almost, right? Okay. And then about what about storerooms or whatnot? I guess that depends on the tenant. I think my main concern is you have so many windows on all 4 sides that some of them will be blocked off, which is understandable. I think for staff on the Equinox project across the street, the staff added a condition of approval that the glass has to remain transparent. They can still do something else beyond that if they want to put up a wall or a vitrine or something along there, but we don't want the glass itself to be changed or to be covered with an opaque film. And I think, like the Mickey's Market, Alma Plaza, I think that's like a prime example of what we don't want to do. And I would say in our downtown zones, we do have protections for that, but we don't have it in CS because it's not a pedestrian, we don't have a pedestrian overlay, so it's not required. But I think I would argue that that is highly desirable. So I don't know how the logic works of how we applied that kind of restriction to the site, but we did do it on the Equinox.
Okay. Well, definitely, I think if it's a recommendation to add that as a condition of approval by the board, we can do that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And that is a very prominent corner.
We could live with that, or we could live with if we need to do something, we come back to your board. But I don't see us wanting to block the window. I think you do have some solid areas. So
Yeah.
it's not very deep space. I think the window is precious.
And we have lots of tenants in Palo Alto that do need to block the windows, but they do something else. There's some display area
Yeah.
or there's something. And
We're
it's
okay
not
with
just,
that.
Yeah. Okay. And then, Ken, I have a question on you had an integral planter along El Camino that you removed. Right. And I was wondering what the logic was of that.
That was to help make the profile or
Taller.
make it feel taller. And, we did it also at the back of the building.
Right.
And because you're lowering your car. So it was really about being able to walk up to the storefront and look in.
Could we have an option of having some freestanding planters depending on the tenant?
We did some planters at the back. We could certainly do a similar, treatment that we did here and have something in front.
I would say it's an
once we know.
option because it depends on
Yeah.
to me it depends on the tenant. But I would just say having 16 feet of concrete in the front with just street trees, like it's pretty stark. And I mean, if you compare it to other recent projects, that's pretty naked. And not knowing, and we don't really have control over the retail space so much. I would like to have that.
So you would let us have the option to be able to do that?
I don't know. I guess I would defer to staff on how to.
We can create
how
a
to do it.
condition that says that it can be something that they can do, and then they would just come back maybe for a staff review or something like that. We can work it out.
Yeah.
And it could be an option.
Yeah, but I would just say generally it's not a good look of having all concrete, no planters.
And that's
The
definitely part
recess
of
is nice.
the
Yeah.
guidelines.
Clear glass is nice. And then did you change the glazing from frameless to framed because of the clear story, or is that? So is there I don't know. I don't work on this kind of project, so I didn't know. Is there a limit on how high you can go with frameless glass?
About 12 feet, but you're into 3/4 inch thick frameless glass.
So it gets really expensive
Yeah.
really quickly.
We're at 11 feet.
And does it make any difference on having a curb or not?
Yes, it would. Yeah, so if we had the planter back, then that height would be reduced.
Yeah. Okay, I can go
I'm
either.
honestly fine with the way we had it before.
Yeah. I don't know, is it just me? I just always think that it looks so squished and so low and that retail space should have high, or seemingly high spaces. But that's just me.
So we're at 11 feet now.
Okay, I like that.
Okay.
I had a question on the materials. Oh, actually on the windows. So you're saying all of the windows are clear anodized? Like residential?
No, the residential windows are the dark anodized, correct? Yeah.
That's where I got confused. I was actually thinking you could I was thinking it was going to be one way or the other. I think it actually may be better to have them different.
I would like them different.
Yeah, that was my take on it. It's
Yeah.
better to distinguish the, okay. I
Yeah.
thought I was reading it that everything was clear.
No, so the upper ones are dark and the lower ones are supposed to be the clear.
Okay, I like that. I like in the residential units, like facing Portage, are those windows sliders, or are they casements? Or are they fixed? Or?
They would be casements, and yeah, I would hope that they would be casements.
Yeah, I don't want
So-
sliders, because then the insect screens go on the outside, and it darkens the building, and makes it really ugly.
That's,
Casements are better, because the screens are
On the
inside.
inside.
Yes, okay.
that was my preference.
And then on the parking lot, in the landscape, I guess, or is this you're showing like 5-foot-high walls along Portage? And I was wondering if that had been reviewed for or site triangle safety, the Public Works has a site triangle, or I guess it's transportation
Right,
has a site
right.
triangle.
We have a 5-foot setback from the property line along Portage. And so
That's
with
enough?
that, sorry? Well, with I think it's a 6-foot deep by, I forget what the dimension is this way, site triangle, but by the time you get to, as you're pulling out, essentially, the wall starts here. So we're clear of that 6-foot by whatever triangle, yes.
Okay, and then I think the staff had asked us to comment on the carport
Yes.
and the removal of landscape for that. My first hunch was that it was not a good idea, but I think if you're saying that they're going to be the translucent panels, then I think it can work. But my thing is that even though it may look low profile in elevation, the ones that I've always seen are so ugly from below.
Yeah.
And that if I were sitting in the plaza, I wouldn't want to see the underside of
Right,
the
what you
carport.
see. So the
So,
idea,
yeah, if
is-
it's clear, then or the
Right.
translucent ones, then I think I'm okay. But if
no, it's actually a clear glass with the PV film, yeah, so it's not like
Yeah.
opaque or
so, my
translucent.
understanding is from other
Right, yeah.
we've had other architects try to use those, and there have been issues with the manufacturer. Like one of the manufacturers went out of business, but now there's another one, or I don't know all the details about it. But if you can't get them, if there's an issue, I would recommend not doing the.
Oh, I don't think we'd want them
Carport.
dark. I mean, I don't think I'd want
Right.
those spaces to
That's
read
what I'm
dark.
saying. If you can't get it,
Yeah.
I think that I would rather have it conditioned that it is these translucent ones, and if it doesn't work, then we need to come back and revisit the design.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're good
I
with
think
that.
that's it.
Win?
Thank you, and thank you for the trees that turn on and off. I appreciate it. I was thinking about a couple of things. One was pedestrian experience, the other one was noise, which are sort of related. So, staff, have you done any noise studies of the plaza, or are we just assuming it's going to be over 70?
We did do, as part of the CEQA analysis, there was definitely a noise,
I have read.
a noise review done.
Right.
And I can have our consultant here to speak to what we actually specifically did for that.
Sure, because I understand that this is an area where the ambient noise is so high that in order to have housing, we need to make it quieter inside.
Yeah.
But that doesn't deal with the problems of the outside spaces that face El Camino in particular. So we just have so many failed plazas on El Camino. So this is such a lovely one. I don't want it to fail, and I'm sure you don't either. So I would like to hear about what the noise is likely to be in the plaza.
It's also what's nice about having that one enclosed on the second floor.
Right, and I'm thinking about which is lovely, thank you. The housing looks like housing also, appreciate that. But it's the ground floor plaza I'm thinking about.
Right. We did really look at only interior space, which is typical for and how the noise ordinance works, that you want
Indeed.
to make sure interior space is good. So we didn't look specifically at the plaza. I believe the city noise ordinance is developed so that it really looks at open space, not necessarily just this kind of private plaza experience. But we did do noise measurements near the site, or on the site, pretty much right on El Camino Real. And
Right in the Foot Locker
So,
parking lot?
yeah, actually, I think like on the sidewalk. So those are listed, what our noise measurement result is listed in the study.
So what I'm asking is essentially, can you tell us generally whether we're setting up a noisier experience by having these buildings next to each other and all these hard surfaces, or not?
Generally, the structures would block noise, so I would imagine that if you are in the little seating area, the buildings would mostly block noise from Portage and from El Camino Real, except for that kind of, very narrow window where noise might come through. But for the most part, noise would be blocked and would be attenuated at that kind of distance from El Camino Real and in between those two buildings.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had another question, which is, do I read that the trees are going to be, the proposals that the tree wells be filled with decomposed granite?
Let me check on that. So that was in the conditions of approval from Dave? That doesn't sound right.
Oh, it says DG on one of these.
Could you tell me what you're looking at specifically?
If I can find it again.
Okay, thank you.
I was looking at a map, a drawing of landscaping. I was hoping it wasn't right. I'm looking at L21, new El Camino Real street tree, London Plain, 4x8 tree well with decomposed granite fill.
Perhaps, Gary, you can speak to that? Thank you.
What I was hoping, of course, was that there's going to be a metal screen over that so I don't trip in it. Which is unfortunately a live possibility.
You're correct, and the trees on El Camino do have the decomposed granite that is flush with the adjacent concrete paving. That was the detail that was requested by the city arborist, so that's what we did. We'd be open to planting in there, but I think that was the preferred solution.
So I'm not arguing for planting there, but I am arguing, based on my experience, that decomposed granite tree wells often are not, in fact, flush with the sidewalk after a while, and that they're hazardous, and they can be hazardous. I don't want to be quoted in the litigation because I haven't that much expertise, but that we'd be much better off if the trees can thrive with steel plates. I mean, the lovely perforated things. I think this is not good design, but I would like to hear more from staff on that point.
So I would need to check in with our Public Works Engineering Department to get more details from them. Certainly, we need to be consistent for whatever requirements they have for their city street tree installation.
Because we have this lovely, we have this lovely plaza. We have people walking around with phones. This is a prime place to trip, and this doesn't seem to me to be a particularly desirable design. The other thing is the current plan that we're looking at, does it have the linear elements running front to back, or are they gone now? And sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not in the drawings.
They are there. That's part of the paving pattern. Yeah.
Great. I like what you've done in the rear. I don't like the front. It seems to me a long way with no benches. Again, I realize I'm presenting myself as feeble, but I will be someday. And I think this would, I don't know if my colleagues agree, but I would like the front of the plaza modified or the planters modified so they include some seating that's easily accessible for the people walking by. Because that's, the design of the project is supposed to be great for people passing by as well as the people visiting and working there. And I think some seating, preferably seating that has a back on it and that permits conversation because it's at right angles, but if it has to be linear, that's okay. In that space between the building, between that first, I guess it's olive tree and the sidewalk would be desirable from my point of view. I do like the bike locker locations, though I hope it's an inadequate number. I hope you have more demand than you have supply. And I have real concerns about the solar, I'm not convinced by the solar carport right at the end of the plaza. I have no problems across the parking lot. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think this could really make the plaza less attractive.
Is that it?
It is.
Okay.
Otherwise, lovely.
I'm also very pleased with the modifications you made. The one big thing that I made a comment on last time, and unfortunately, this is still exactly that, I'm just really not a fan of all three sides are perfectly symmetrical. I hate that. It's like you designed one half and then on a computer just clicked it to have the other half match, and it just, I don't know, to me, a corner element like this ought to be something that either enhances the corner or does something to make it a little bit more unique, rather than where, you know, this could have been plopped anywhere and there's really no relationship to the surrounding area based on that. Based on what my other colleagues are here, that's not enough for me to, you know, reject the building probably, but like I said, I'm really disappointed in that aspect of it. Okay, can I get a motion from someone? Seeing as you had the most comments, is that?
Well, I had like lots of nitpicky comments, but I think that staff was asking really is to your question about, or your comment about the symmetry, which is really the corner, right? The
Yep.
corner of Portage and El
Right.
Camino.
If I can chime in, Robert, with respect, I normally don't like symmetry, but I find this to be a very balanced composition and actually refreshing, coming especially from this
Okay, I'm not-
architect. I really think somehow it works, even though I agree that it's incredibly symmetrical. Almost so much so that
On
it's...
all three sides, it's perfectly
absolutely.
symmetrical, yeah, I know.
But the floor plan is symmetric, the logic behind it is clean. I find it just works architecturally for me, even though in general,
Okay.
rules are made to be broken. How's that?
Love it.
The way I'm looking at this, in my ideal world, this project would have some sort of corner design, and the project
But isn't that what we're striving for?
on the other side, on the Banana Records We Fix Max site, would have some sort of
Wow.
similar symmetry. San Jose has done this in their downtown. I've worked on one of the projects where all the buildings at this intersection do the same thing, and it looks really nice. We are unfortunately not that coordinated, and I think we suffer for that. But that's the way our process is set up. To me, Ken, I think the most important thing is that you have the dematerialized corners basically you have the balcony decks, and you have a lot of changes in the materials. And to me, that's the key thing to making a good building that has depth and shadow and richness. So I guess I'm saying that's enough in my mind.
The whole
Ideally,
composition is asymmetrical.
yeah, and then I would say ideally I would rather have something. I would rather have like a urban design plan for that whole for fries and the whole thing, in my mind. But we're not there. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve. Well, actually, how does the board want the courtyard to come back? It sounds like there's a majority that's not happy with the front half.
That's probably
You
enough.
want
to
subcommittee
come
or
back
the
to
whole board?
Subcommittee, I think, is probably, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve recommend approval of the
Hang on a second,
project.
let him make his motion, then. Go ahead.
With the following amendments, and I think staff can work on the actual language of it. One is to require transparent glazing on the retail windows. Have an option for planters along the retail space on El Camino. Have a condition of approval for the carports, the carport roof to be translucent photovoltaics, right? Or return to the subcommittee for an alternate design if that's not possible. And return to this, and have the front half of the courtyard return to the subcommittee for, how do we want to say it? Improved seating, screening, amenities.
Does anyone share my view on the decomposed granite in the sidewalk?
Oh, so our design guidelines, the El Camino design guidelines require the grades.
The grades.
Like this, or this thing, we have requirements for that. And I think what the issue is that in recent years, our urban forestry people have been trying to get ways of adding more soil to them so that the trees do better, especially during the drought. So they've been experimenting with, like this one has like the silva cells, and they've been looking at other things as well. So why don't we just have that come back to subcommittee? They review the final design of that. But the design guidelines do require the grate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Ken, you had a question?
I do, and it's for staff, actually. We're supposed to be approved by March 31st, so this would be approved potentially with the condition, and we can resolve the condition after March 31st?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certain we can definitely work on anything in the interim because it will go to council in May. So we can definitely work on things, but certainly we've hit the milestone.
Okay, great.
For the recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, then, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay,
Nay.
just because of my concern about that low structure with
Okay, anyway, it
semi-clear glass.
passes 3-2.
Great, thank you. 4-1, right? Oh, you voted nay too? Oh, okay. If you look closer, not one side is symmetrical. If you look closer.
Right. The one side is not symmetrical. I said 3 out of the 4.
No, none of them are symmetrical.
Oh, give me a break. I mean, we're talking.
Are we off? Are we offline now? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that'll do it. Any other comments from, or I should say, correspondence from staff or anything from staff? Okay, I guess then we're adjourned. And there is no subcommittee, right? Okay.